Chapter 2157. It's nothing. When Senior Shao saved me, he used his avatar to scratch me. Weren't you also caught? Kwa Chiao opened her mouth and took a breath of air. She said with a choked voice, Sister Shua already gave me a pill. It's just that I didn't have time to change my Daoist robe. Oh, Kwa Rhyming nodded. His heart was finally at ease. He knew that Xiaohua's phoenix avatar's sharp claws were very powerful. His heart was also slightly distressed for Kwa Chiao. Xiaohua and Xue flew into the air and watched the gradually shrinking whirlpool. They still couldn't use their divine sense to probe inside. Good girl. Xiaohua sniffed the fragrance of Xue's body and said, Why is your husband's luck so bad? Wherever I go, there will be problems. This kind of heaven and earth anomaly happened in such a vast and boundless QC. Why did I have to encounter it? If you say I encountered it, then I encountered it. I could have run away by myself. But my wife's kindness was aroused and insisted that your husband go save them. My wife, how can you be so ruthless? Aren't you afraid that your husband will be in danger? Hee. Xue pursed her lips and said with a smile, I naturally know that you won't be in any danger. That's why I let you go. Ah. My wife, you have the ability to foresee the future. How come I never knew about it? Xiaohua laughed and said indifferently. However, a trace of gloominess appeared on Xue's face. However, she forced a smile and said, That's right. My husband can do it on a whim. How can I foresee the future? Alright, this Kwa Rhyming was brought back by this young man. How will my wife reward this young man? Xiaohua said as his nose gently rubbed against Xue's snow-white neck. Alright, Xue's face flushed red and said, Kwa Chiao and Kwa Rhyming are coming up soon. Don't let them laugh at us. TSK, if these two people continue to chatter, let's see if my husband doesn't throw them into the whirlpool together. Xiaohua muttered in a low voice. However, just as he was about to dawdle, Kwa Rhyming held Kwa Chiao's hand and flew up from the QC. Kwa Rhyming looked a little embarrassed, while Kwa Chiao was natural and unrestrained. She did not seem to be shy at all. Junior thanks Senior Shao for saving my life again. Kwa Chiao and Kwa Rhyming bowed to pay their respects. At this moment, Kwa Chiao was sincerely convinced by Xiaohua. This cultivator is truly resourceful and noble. Hee, get up. Xiaohua also couldn't stay on Xue's body. He straightened up and waved his hand. This is my wife's order. If you want to thank someone, you should thank her. Naturally, the two of them bowed to Xue. Xue immediately supported the two of them. She blinked her eyes and said, Since you've been through life and death, I hope that the two of you can connect with each other and cultivate together. Kwa Rhyming was a little embarrassed, but Kwa Chiao nodded and said seriously, I will remember Sister Xue's words. Oh, although it was my wife's orders, you still have to thank me. Xiaohua interrupted again. Yes, as long as I have it or Brother Ming can take it out, we will definitely thank Senior Shao. Kwa Chiao said without hesitation. Great. Xiaohua praised in his heart, the last devil spear shaft won't run away. However, since Xiaohua knew that there was no devil spear shaft in Kwa Chiao's storage pouch, he didn't say anything. He smiled and said, Since fellow Kwa said so, I will remember it. When I think of something and ask you for it, don't refuse. Of course. Kwa Chiao nodded and said, I still have some things left on the island. When I return to Blood Red Island, I will definitely let Senior Shao choose. In addition, if Senior Shao needs anything, don't hesitate to tell me. If Brother Ming and I can do it, we will definitely do our best. Oh, right, fellow Qua, your body seems to be very tough. Could it be that you have a secret technique? Xiao Hua's eyes turned, and he thought of something and asked. Senior, this is the secret technique of my blood-red island. Qua Rhyming nodded and said, I have practiced it since I was young. Secret technique of body refinement. Xiao Hua's heart moved, and he immediately connected with Qua Chiao, or strength. He turned his head and said, Fellow Qua, have you practiced it before? Yes. Qua Chiao, nodded without hesitation and said, This is the rule of my blood-red island. All disciples have to practice it when they are young. However, after they grow up, it depends on their aptitude. Most of the female disciples give up, and only 30% of the male disciples can continue to practice it. Brother Ming is one of them. Hearing this, Xiao Hua couldn't help but feel happy. He rolled his eyes and said with a smile, This secret technique. I probably can't see it, right? Qua Rhyming's face showed that he was in a difficult position, while Qua Chiao, said naturally, It is as Senior Xiao said. This is the secret technique of my blood-red island. Outsiders can't see it, and we have already made a blood oath. Yes. Xiao Hua nodded. Qua Chiao, said with a smile, However, Senior Xiao has the complete technique of my blood-red island. If you want to exchange it with that technique, there will be no problem. Qua Rhyming looked at Qua Chiao, with a puzzled expression, and Qua Chiao, didn't explain. Yes, that's right. Xiao Hua nodded and said with a wave of his hand, I just suffered a little injury and need to rest for a few days. Is there a place for me to rest? Can you two fellow Taoists lead me there? Senior, please follow me. Qua Chiao, nodded and used her divine sense to scan the Great Flag Reef, which had disappeared without a trace. She flew up and flew towards the sunset. After more than 20 days, above the boundless sea, a blood-red color was painted on the horizon. Corresponding to the blood-red color, the Sea of Union was also blood-red. Moreover, there was a particularly bright spot amidst this blood-red color. When they flew closer, they could clearly see that it was an island that was connected together. On the island, blood-red plants covered the ground, and the rocks and soil on the island were also blood-red. It was very strange. Senior Xiao, this is my home. Qua Chiao said and pointed. However, when her hand reached for Qua Rhyming's hand flashed. It was as if he was afraid of being seen by the other disciples of Blood-Red Island. Qua Chiao glared at Qua Rhyming, and this guy obediently stretched out his hand, allowing Qua Chiao to grab his carrot-sized finger. Xiao Hua stroked his chin and looked at the island about 100 li away. After thinking for a while, he released his divine sense and rushed towards Blood-Red Island. Oh! Qua Chiao obviously sensed Xiao Hua's divine sense and was slightly stunned. Soon after, she understood what Xiao Hua was thinking. Sure enough, after a while, the same divine sense swept out from Blood-Red Island, circled around Xiao Hua and the others, and locked onto Xiao Hua. Chapter 2158. The master of your island is about to step into the middle stage of Gold Core. Xiao Hua said thoughtfully. Now Qua Chiao no longer doubted Xiao Hua's cultivation. She also sensed the island master's cultivation and respectfully replied, Senior Xiao, please know. The island master's name is Qua Heng, he is an early Gold Core stage cultivator. I'm afraid his cultivation is similar to Senior Xiao's. Hearing Qua Chiao's probing, Xiao Hua smiled and didn't reply. His cultivation was still at the early stage of foundation establishment. After flying forward for a while, an early-stage Gold Core cultivator led several late-stage foundation establishment cultivators to welcome them. When Xiao Hua saw these cultivators, he couldn't help but be stunned. When he saw Heartwarming, he already felt that this guy was tall like a giant ape. However, compared to these masters, Heartwarming was simply a small ape. The gold core cultivator in front of him was more than 10 feet tall. Moreover, he had big shoulders and a round waist. His body was incomparably sturdy. This was the appearance of Xiao Hua's mighty Vajra Dharma body. And Heartwarming was almost 2 heads shorter than this gold core cultivator. Looking at the late-stage foundation establishment cultivators near the gold core cultivator, they were also sturdy. However, they were still one size smaller than Heartwarming. Of course, they were still one size bigger than Heartwarming. Damn it! Xiao Hua was immediately overjoyed. The disciples of Blood Red Island don't need to compete at all. They just need to stand there and compare their height to see who is stronger. Heartwarming's divine sense swept over Xiao Hua and his brows slightly wrinkled. He saw a cultivator's divine sense rashly sweep in and immediately checked. Only then did he realize that there was a cultivator 100 li away accompanied by Blood Red Island's disciples. He understood that this should be a gold core cultivator visiting Blood Red Island, so he brought the main disciples of Blood Red Island to welcome him. However, Heartwarming unexpectedly discovered that Xiao Hua's cultivation was only at the early stage of foundation establishment. How could he not frown? It wasn't that he didn't know that Dawn Rain Continent had a mysterious technique to conceal one's cultivation, but it couldn't directly conceal one's cultivation from gold core to foundation establishment, right? He could believe it if it was from nascent soul or divine clone to foundation establishment, but he himself was a gold core cultivator. Of course, he knew how difficult it was. I, disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect, Xiao Hua, greets Island Master Heartwarming. Xiao Hua stepped forward and saluted. He didn't use the identity of a junior. Xue Xue smiled and bowed. Junior Xue Xue of the Imperial Thunder Sect greets Senior Hua. He, so it's a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. No disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect has ever visited my Blood Red Island. Your presence brings light to my humble dwelling. Heartwarming no longer hesitated in his heart. He hurriedly stepped forward to return the greeting and said with a smile. Island Master, you're too courteous. Xiao Hua smiled and said, I accompanied Junior Sister to the QC to gain experience. Not only did Junior Sister successfully reach foundation establishment overseas, she even encountered 2 extremely outstanding disciples from your island. This Xiao is very happy. I heard from your island's disciple that Blood Ray Island is holding a competition that is held once every 10 years. This Xiao feels that it is fate, so I came to nag you. How presumptuous. Ha, congratulations, fellow Daoist Xue. Heartwarming was a gold core cultivator. He had already seen that Xue Xue's realm had just stabilized. He also heard that Xiao Hua didn't hide anything and even praised his disciple. He was happy in his heart. He clapped his hands and took out a jade bottle. He handed it over and said with a smile, This is my Blood Red Island's Foundation Establishment medicinal pill. It can't be compared to the Imperial Thunder Sects, but it is also a little bit of my appreciation. Xue Xue generously received it and Thank you for the medicine, Senior. This junior has always been curious about the spiritual medicines of the overseas islands. Senior has satisfied this junior's wish. No need to thank me, no need to thank me. Heartwarming waved his hand and introduced several people around him to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua also didn't neglect and cupped his hands to return the greeting. These late-stage foundation establishment cultivators didn't understand as well as Heartwarming. Although they also bowed, they all addressed each other as equals. Xiao Hua didn't care. After all, he really was a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator. When Heartwarming saw this, he didn't reprimand them. He only smiled and watched. After Xiao Hua finished greeting, Heartwarming and Qua Chiao came forward to report. Hearing that Qua Chiao actually asked Xiao Hua to be her helper, Qua Heng smiled. You little girl, if fellow Daoist Xiao is your helper, other people still want to compete with you like this? Immediately after, he pondered for a moment and said with a smile, since fellow Daoist Xiao wants to see the competition of my blood-red island and is still so enthusiastic, I can't not help but fulfill his wish. Moreover, now that we've reached the final stage of the competition, we'll simply hold the trial of the island tomorrow. All disciples will participate. Island Lord. Qua Chiao said in panic, Senior Xiao only has profound magic power. His physical body isn't necessarily tough. For him to participate in the entire trial of the island, I'm afraid, it's not suitable, right? Heartwarming seemed to have thought of something and said, Chiao, Senior Xiao should be fine. Seeing Heartwarming's abnormal correction, Qua Chiao was also slightly surprised. Hee, fellow Daoist Xiao. Qua Heng said with a smile, fellow Daoist must also know that my blood-red island's foundation is body refining. In this trial of the island, there are many areas that test the achievements of body refining. Other areas also test magic power. Yes, because this grand event is held once every 10 years by my blood-red island, the fellow Taoists of the nearby islands also like to participate. Therefore, the ancestors allowed the disciples of Blood-Red Island to invite helpers. On one hand, it increases the fun, and on the other hand, it also strengthens the cooperation with other islands. Of course, if fellow Daoist Xiao participates, there's no need to talk about the magic power segment. Who can compete with you? However, if it's just magic power, fellow Daoist Xiao also feels that it's meaningless, right? Do you have to participate in all the trials, including the body refining technique? Looking at Qua Heng's smile on the eager faces of the few late-stage foundation establishment cultivators, Xiao Hua said with a smile, all right. I also happen to know some body refining techniques. I can also compare notes with the fellow Taoists of Blood-Red Island. Imperial Thunder Sect also has body refining techniques. Qua Heng was somewhat stunned. I've never heard of it. My Imperial Thunder Sect naturally also has body refining techniques. It's just that it's not particularly famous. Xiao Hua naturally couldn't damage the reputation of Imperial Thunder Sect, so he replied with a smile. Alright, fellow Daoist Xiao, please. Qua Heng swung his Daoist robe. Fellow Daoist Qua, please go first. Xiao Hua said modestly. Immediately, several people flew towards Blood-Red Island. This Blood-Red Island was different from Awakening Silicon Island. There was no distinction between the main island and the auxiliary island. There was only a group of islands scattered together. These islands looked like one big island from afar, but when one looked closer, there were many cliffs, canyons, and accumulated seawater that separated these islands. Of course, the defense of Blood-Red Island was even stronger than that of Awakening Silicon Island. There were many places that actually had magic power confining arrays. Everyone had no choice but to land and walk in step by step. In the evening, Qua Heng held a banquet to entertain Xiao Hua and Xue Xue. Of course, apart from these two Imperial Thunder Sect disciples, there were also some disciples from the nearby islands of Blood-Red Island. However, most of these disciples were Qi Refining Realm cultivators, and very few of them were Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators. During the banquet, Qua Heng was even more polite to Xiao Hua, and there was even a bit of respect in his tone. Xiao Hua understood that Qua Chiao and Heartwarming must have told Qua Heng about the matter of them being rescued. However, since Qua Heng didn't mention it, Xiao Hua didn't take it to heart. His road of experience was a road of sowing seeds, a road of doing good deeds, a road of fame, and a road of soaring cultivation. He could be considered to have regarded false reputation as a trivial matter. In addition, during the banquet, Xiaohua could be considered to have seen all of Blood Red Island's Foundation Establishment Realm and Peak Chi Refining Realm disciples. Contrary to his expectations, there wasn't a single well-built female cultivator. All of the female disciples of Blood Red Island were as petite as Hua Qiao, looking thin and weak. This made Xiaohua have no choice but to start thinking about the good deeds his Phoenix Celestial Body and Fairy Hongxia's Ice Phoenix Celestial Body had done after drinking a few mouthfuls of spiritual wine. Alas, drinking more spiritual wine is indeed not a good thing. Xiaohua and Shui came to the resting place arranged by Blood Red Island and couldn't help but think. The resting place of the disciples of the overseas islands was somewhat different from that of the Dawn Rain continent. Most of them built their cave dwellings inside the stone walls, and all of them were underground. There were very few pavilions and palaces. My wife. Seeing this exquisite cave dwelling with bright red decorations, Xiaohua became restless and said in a low voice, "Finally, it's late at night again. One night is worth several thousand spirit stones. Why don't we rest early?" Shui was somewhat shy. She looked around and shook her head again. "My husband, this is obviously the place where Blood Red Island entertains guests. I don't know how many people have rested here. Wouldn't it be better if we just adjust our breathing, nourish our true origin?" "Damn it, that's right." Xiaohua suddenly realized and hurriedly said with an apologetic smile, "Your husband was wrong." Before he could explain further, a communication talisman flew in from outside the cave dwelling. Xiaohua pinched the communication talisman and a smile appeared on his face. He said, "My wife, go inside and adjust your breathing. Your husband has good news." Shui blinked her eyes and said with a smile, "Could it be that the female disciple of Blood Red Island has taken a fancy to my husband? Why are you so impatient?" Xiaohua said helplessly, "Of course not. It's Hua Qiao, and Heartwarming who came. I'm afraid they have good things for your husband." TSK, looking at Xiaohua's greedy appearance, Shui shook her head helplessly, "Don't you have enough good things?" My wife knows that there is no such thing as the most, only more. Your husband likes to have more, the more the better." Not long after, Heartwarming and Hua Qiao arrived together. The moment they met, Hua Qiao took out a few storage bags and said respectfully, "Senior Xiao, our lives were saved by Senior. Moreover, the tentacles of Gongxia and the 2 tiger spots were also given to us by Senior. Junior discussed with Brother Ming, and these storage bags were hidden by the 2 of us. Also, Junior used the opportunity of the banquet to make some transactions with Senior brothers and Senior sisters, exchanging for some rare items. These are all for Senior. Senior, please accept them as a token of my appreciation. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Calm to vote for it." Chapter 2159. Hua Qiao originally thought that Xiaohua would refuse. Who knew that Xiaohua would take it without hesitation and scan it with his divine sense? Nonsense, didn't he come to Blood Red Island just to get Hua Qiao, storage pouch? In order to gather all the demonic tools, Xiaohua almost lost his life. Senior Xiao is really frank. Hua Qiao didn't know what Xiaohua was thinking and secretly praised him in her heart. Sure enough, one of the storage pouches contained many demonic tools. One of them was the demonic spear shaft that Xiaohua wanted. The cracks and broken parts were very similar to the ones in the space. Moreover, the small demonic hammer that Hua Qiao used before was also among them. It seemed that Hua Qiao really took out all the things. What is this? Xiaohua naturally couldn't show his attention and looked at the other storage pouch. The storage pouch was full of miscellaneous items. One of them was an ox head token. It was also modeled with rushed and was very similar to the tiger head token in the space. After thinking for a moment, Xiaohua took out the token and asked, "Xiao, what is this token?" "This? I also don't know." Seeing Xiaohua directly call her Qiao, Qua Qiao, was very happy. She glanced at Heartwarming and said, "This thing was picked up by Martial Uncle in the early years when I was doing a foundation establishment trial on the Sea of Kuei-He. There were two of them, one seemed to be a pig's head. I really don't remember, so Martial Uncle casually gave me this ox head token." "Which Martial Uncle?" Xiaohua said with a smile, "If possible, can you also give his token to me?" "Oh, it's Martial Uncle Qua Yu." Qua Qiao answered without hesitation, but she was a bit embarrassed. "I will ask Martial Uncle Qua, but that thing is many years old. I don't know if Martial Uncle still has it. Moreover, who knows if he wants to exchange it with Senior Xiao." Xiaohua said with a smile, "You can go and ask, see what conditions he has." "Okay." Qua Qiao readily agreed and pointed her finger, "Senior Xiao, the things in this storage bag are all strange things that Brother Ming and I obtained in the Qian-He Sea. We don't know their uses. Even if you ask me, I don't know." As expected, it's really strange. There's actually a small finger bone here." Xiaohua smiled and put down the storage pouch. Then, he looked at the other storage pouches. They were filled with sea beasts' inner cores, bones, and other things. There were even some spirit herbs from the sea. Thus, Xiaohua pointed at the storage pouch that contained devil tools and asked, "Devil tools are extremely rare in the Dawn Rain continent. Why do you have so many of them on Bloodshine Island?" "Hee, I'll teach Senior Xiao well." Qua Qiao laughed and said, "Seniors all cultivate Dharma spells, and this demonic artifact is extremely heavy. Without a body-tempering cultivation technique, who would use it? My Blood Ray Island uses the body refining technique as its foundation. Naturally, we need a lot of demonic artifacts. Many cultivators who obtain demonic artifacts would bring them to the Sea City to trade with my Blood Ray Island." Looking at the storage pouch, Qua Qiao was somewhat reluctant to part with it and said, "Since young, I've been fond of refining tools. I've dabbled in demonic artifacts. Among them, there's a mysterious demonic artifact. In my opinion, it should be the famous weapon in the demon realm, Chiao Yin Lu. However, I only have a small part of it, so I can't make a complete judgment." Then, a trace of regret appeared on her face. "When I went to Haoming City this time, I encountered another spear end. Unfortunately, it was snatched by another cultivator. It's really hateful." "Oh. Chiao Yin Lu." Xiaohua was obviously stunned. This name was definitely unfamiliar to him before he came to the Qian-He Sea. But just now, when Heavenly Demon Sect's Zhang Qingxiao wanted to escape from the 10,000 Demon Realms Empress, she made up a lie. Wasn't it to find this Chiao Yin Lu? Could it be that it was this item? Is this it? There were many demonic artifacts in the storage pouch. However, only this spear shaft was left with a damaged section. Yes, Senior Xiao's eyes are indeed as sharp as torches. Qua Qiao praised. Xiaohua originally wanted to take another demonic artifact first and then pretend to take this damaged one as well. It could be said that he couldn't refuse but reluctantly took it. Since Qua Qiao sincerely gave it to him, Xiaohua didn't pretend and smiled. Since Qiao is so sincere, I'll accept it. Following which, Xiaohua took some of the spiritual herbs from the sea as well as the storage pouch that was filled with strange things. He then passed the remaining items to Qua Qiao. Senior. Rhyming was a little anxious and said, "What you took are all useless things. These are the ones that are really useful." Xiao Hua pursed his lips and smiled. With a profound expression, he looked at the two with bright eyes. Xiao and Xiao Er's brother Ming. Actually, what I take or don't take, isn't it your goodwill? I didn't save the two of you for your things. So what's the difference between taking more and taking less? Of course, I saw that Xiao had deep feelings for her brother Ming. Even if she didn't want her own life, she would still die with her brother Ming. This kind of deep affection, even the heavens and earth would be convinced. Why can't I take action? Although these things aren't of much use to me, I hope that the two of you can peacefully dual cultivate in the future and reach the gold core realm. Senior. Rhyming's eyes were filled with tears. Xiao was grateful. They really didn't expect the person in front of them to be so noble. Senior, please wait a moment. I'll go find Marshal Uncle. I'll definitely find the things that Senior wants. Xiao left without saying anything. Xiao don't be anxious. Xiao Hua stopped her and said. It's already late. Let's talk about it tomorrow. I'll also stay here for a while. Okay. Xiao was very obedient and asked again, other than that thing, what else is Senior Xiao looking for in He? Junior wants to see what effect it has. So it's like that. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said, if there are any special spirit herbs in He, it doesn't matter what kind of spirit herb it is. As long as it's a seedling or even a seed, help me find it. Okay, Junior understands. Xiao thought that Xiao Hua was disrespectful and immediately patted her chest. Remember, I don't want anything that's perennial. I only want seeds or even seedlings. Xiao Hua didn't forget to remind them. Yes, Rhyming and Xiao took the storage pouch and rushed out excitedly. I am just so noble. There's really no other way. Xiao Hua naturally knew what the two of them were thinking. He loosened his shoulders and said helplessly. That's right, 1,000-year-old spirit herb is really useless to Xiao Hua. Chapter 2160. Although the inner cores in Xiao storage pouch were not bad, they couldn't be compared to the sea beasts Xiao Hua caught in the whirlpool. Xiao Hua didn't care about spirit stones, so what could they give him? Perhaps only those strange and unknown things in the He would be able to do so. Xiao Hua threw the storage pouch into the space and placed the finger bone near the white bone in the space. Sure enough, they were one and had a faint lightning connection. Then, he looked at the tiger head token and the ox head token. They were similar, but they didn't have any spiritual energy fluctuations. Who knew if they were really related? As for the demonic spear shaft, Xiao Hua was most concerned about, it was real. When the fragments of the demonic spear were put together, it was really a complete demonic spear. Is this the dragon's silver armor? It's actually a famous weapon in the demon world. I can't see anything strange about it. Xiao Hua pinched his chin and thought in confusion, perhaps, I can see its uniqueness after I repair it. Actually, Xiao Hua wanted to ask Xiao about the refining method or her experience. However, since Xiao didn't put the jade slip in the storage pouch, the refining method should be a secret of Blood Red Island. He didn't need to make things difficult for her. Moreover, if Xiao Hua asked, wouldn't his noble image be destroyed? Forget it. I know the refining method of the 5 elements, and I also have the demonic slip from the demon world. With Xiao Er's annotations, how can it be worse than Blood Red Island? Xiao Hua clapped his hands and took out the jade slip that he had been referring to for the past few days. Early in the morning, when the sun rose, the clear light swept across Blood Red Island and dyed it red. Outside the cave where Xiaohua and Shueshue were resting, there were already Blood Red Island disciples waiting for them. Xiaohua opened his eyes and scanned with his divine sense. Naturally, he couldn't let them wait for too long, so he walked out of the cave with Shueshue. Senior Xiao. The disciple standing in wait was a qi refining cultivator. He said respectfully, "My Blood Ray Island's island test will begin in an hour. All the martial uncles and senior brothers are preparing for it, so the island master had to ask this junior to invite senior over for the test. Please forgive us, senior." Hee, no problem. Xiaohua suddenly understood and raised his hand. Senior Xiao, please. The attendant disciple respectfully activated the yellow talisman and led the way in front of him, flying directly to the location of the blood-colored beach that Xiaohua had just passed when he entered the island yesterday. At this time, a lot of disciples had already gathered on the beach. Many of them were from the banquet last night. More than 10 Middle Foundation Establishment stage disciples came over to chat with Xiaohua. Xiaohua also responded with a smile. Fellow Daoist Xiao, I heard that you want to exchange some things with I. Just as Xiaohua was responding, a slightly cold voice sounded. Xiaohua turned his head and saw a slightly tall female cultivator with slightly dark skin and faint wrinkles at the corner of her eyes. Moreover, her hair was also somewhat white as she landed behind him. Fellow Daoist. What do you want in exchange for I? Xiaohua thought for a moment. He seemed to have seen this female cultivator last night. However, she was very far away, so he only swept his eyes over her. The female cultivator was slightly taken aback. Weren't you the one who sent Xiao, to look for me last night? Oh, so Kuo Yu is fellow Daoist. Xiaohua immediately realized. Last night, he mistook Kuo Yu for a male cultivator, and Kuo Qiao, didn't explain. What? Is it not me, but someone else? Kuo Yu said unhappily. Qiao, didn't make it clear yesterday. Xiaohua hurriedly cupped his hands and said, this Xiao apologizes here. And Kuo Yu's face was slightly happy, and she nodded. This old one hasn't seen that token for a long time. I originally wanted to look for it again in a few days, but Qiao, sincerely requested, so this old one took a long time to find it. Thank you for your help, fellow Daoist. Xiaohua was very happy and said, if fellow Daoist needs anything, you can tell this Xiao. If this Xiao can satisfy fellow Daoist, I will try my best to satisfy you. No need. Kuo Yu waved her hand and said, you saved Xiao, my Blood Red Island is indebted to you. How can this old one ask you for something? Oh. Really? Thank you, fellow Daoist. Xiaohua was overjoyed. Kuo Yu shook her head and said with a smile, this old one didn't agree to give it to you. This old one only said that you don't need to exchange it. Xiaohua was a bit embarrassed and said with a smile, fellow Daoist, what do you mean? Kuo Yu pointed to the distance and said, there is a departure realm heaven in the Ring Island trial. When you go there, the disciples of Blood Red Island must defeat one person to pass, and the person who is defeated will be eliminated. Fellow Daoist Xiao, this old one will wait for fellow Daoist's arrival inside. If you win, this old one will give the token to fellow Daoist. Departure Realm Heaven. Xiaohua muttered and said, all right, this Xiao accepts fellow Daoist Kuo's challenge. But, what if fellow Daoist Xiao loses? Kuo Yu narrowed her eyes and looked at Xiaohua with interest. Fellow Daoist Kuo, are you that confident? Xiaohua said with a smile, fellow Daoist Kuo seems to only be at the late stage of foundation establishment, right? Only at the late stage of foundation establishment? Kuo Yu covered her mouth and said, "Fellow Daoist Xiao is indeed a disciple of a large sect of thunder-controlling sect. Fellow Daoist Xiao seems to only be at the early stage of foundation establishment, right?" "Ha ha ha, that's right, this Xiao was wrong." Xiao Hua laughed and looked at Kuo Yu's hair. He patted his hand and took out a spiritual grass, saying with a smile, "If this Xiao loses, this face-retaining grass will be fellow Daoists." Ah, face. Face-retaining grass. When Kuo Yu heard this, she was overjoyed and almost stuttered, Is this really the face-retaining grass? Fellow Daoist, do you think my thunder-controlling sect's disciple would lie?" Xiao Hua patted his hand and put the face-retaining grass back into his storage pouch. At this moment, Kuo Yu's heart was filled with regret. She really didn't expect that Xiao Hua would have something that all female cultivators on the Dawn Rain continent yearn for even in their dreams. Although she already had some gray hair, after taking the face-retaining grass, not only would her appearance not change, but the wrinkles at the corners of her eyes would also disappear and her gray hair would also become dark. AI, this Xiao Hua is so young, yet he can be welcomed by the island master. How could he be a young cultivator? If he has the face-retaining grass, it wouldn't be surprising. Kuo Yu sighed inwardly. Her previous frosty elegance also disappeared. At this moment, Kuo Heng's figure flashed in midair. He held a dark green ocean pearl in his hand and said in a clear voice, "Disciples of the Blood-Red Island, are you ready?" Reporting to the island master, "We are ready." The disciples of the Blood-Red Island sweated in unison. "Good." Kuo Heng said with a smile, "Today is the last day of the 10-year tournament. The previous results have already been recorded in a jade slip by the elders. After the results come out today, the top 10 will be decided. These 10 disciples will not only obtain suitable magic tools, but also get a glimpse of the secret books of my Blood-Red Island. Their cultivation will definitely rise to another level." As he said this, Kuo Heng's body overflowed with brilliance. A water blue color emerged from his hand like a fountain and poured into the ocean pearl. The ocean pearl immediately let out a wang-wang sound and trembled as it flew into the air. Swish swish swish. A series of wind whistled and the water-type heaven and earth spiritual chi in the air was sucked into the ocean pearl. It gave rise to gusts of wind. After absorbing the heaven and earth spiritual chi for half an incense stick's time, the ocean pearl grew to half a chi in size. The dark blue color inside became even deeper. When Xiao Hua's divine sense swept over it, he felt as if he was about to be sucked in. Just when Xiao Hua was surprised and guessing the effects of the ocean pearl, he saw Kuo Heng stretch out his hand and grab the ocean pearl. Then, he spread his wings and used his hand to smash the ocean pearl onto the beach of the Blood-Red Island. With a loud, pang sound, the ocean pearl smashed onto the beach. Not only did it splash up a lot of sand, but the ground under everyone's feet also shook. The sand that splashed up didn't fall down. Instead, it spread along the ocean pearl's spiritual chi and rapidly fluctuated. The ground under everyone's feet also shook more and more. Xiao Hua looked up and saw that all the disciples of the Blood-Red Island were eager to give it a try. They were all staring at a place about 10 zhang in front of them. Roar! A few earth-shattering roars were heard. Plumes of smoke and dust rose from the sea of sand. A blood-red bridge, over 100 feet wide, arched out from the smoke and dust. It gradually crept forward like a spirit snake. The rainbow bridge was either winding, tall, or deep into the island. Xiao Hua's divine sense chased after the rainbow bridge and shockingly discovered that this rainbow bridge circled around the entire Blood-Red Island. Oh, so this is the island trial by fire. Xiao Hua suddenly understood. Above the rainbow bridge, there were more than 10 places where the spiritual chi was obscure. His divine sense couldn't penetrate them. He was afraid that they were some checkpoints of the trial. The departure heaven that Kwa Yu mentioned earlier was probably one of them. Disciples. Tomorrow morning will be the limit. When the first ray of sunlight rises, the rainbow bridge will be closed. My blood-red island's once-in-a-decade competition is about to end. The first disciple to reach the end of the rainbow bridge will be the first in this island trial by fire. Kwa Heng raised his voice and said. After Kwa Heng finished speaking, he cast a spell on the transparent enchantment formed by the sea pearl. The enchantment melted like snow and flowed to the ground, connecting the beach where everyone was to the rainbow bridge. Several Chi refinement disciples had long been impatient. As soon as the restriction opened, they immediately activated their flying talismans and flew toward the rainbow bridge like arrows leaving the bow. Husband, you go. I won't participate. Shue Shue said with a smile, I will wait for you at the end. Good. Xiao Hua nodded. He clapped his hand and took out a jade box. He said with a smile, Wife, you don't have to be idle. Take one of these beauty-retaining grass. Your husband still doesn't know how to refine the beauty-retaining pill. Wife, please bear with it for now. Okay. Shue Shue's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise when she saw Xiao Hua take out the beauty-retaining grass. Now that Xiao Hua gave it to her, she wasn't surprised. She reached out to take it and flew out of the beach with a smile. Fellow Daoist Xiao, we'll go first. If there's a chance, we'd like to see the means of the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples. After waiting for the Qi refinement disciples and early Foundation establishment disciples to fly away, a group of middle Foundation establishment and late Foundation establishment cultivators looked at Xiao Hua with a smile and said. To be continued. Chapter 2161. Hee, there really are people who are not convinced. Xiao Hua secretly laughed in his heart. He cupped his hands and said, Well said, but this Xiao wants to make a bet with all of you fellow Taoists. Whoever loses will have to come out from that rare thing inside the storage bag. Ha, no problem, fellow Taoist Xiao, I hope you have enough face-retaining grass. The cultivators all laughed and flew out using their magic power. Strange. How can they be so sure? Xiao Hua was somewhat surprised, but he still carefully used his magic power and was the last one to get on the rainbow bridge. Although he was not a body-refining cultivator, he had tempered his bones for many years. Even Heartwarming could not compare to him. He did not feel that these Blood Ray Island cultivators were stronger than him. Far away on the other shore of QC, many fishermen in the small fishing village had already begun to worship Xiao Hua before they set out to fish. No matter how far away they were from QC, in the villages and farms of Ocean City, Cloud City, and other places, the common people of the secular world had also planted the fine seeds gifted by Xiao Hua. This fine seed was clearly different from the previous rice. It was not only resistant to drought. Moreover, it matured early, and the food it produced was incomparably fragrant. Not to mention eating it after steaming, even if it was chewed in the mouth, it would still be sweet. Many babies in the peasant families, because their mothers did not have enough milk, ate the thin porridge made from this grain since they were young. Although they were only a few months old, their small chubby bodies and sparkling eyes were not inferior to those babies of rich families. The farmers' eyes were bright, and they fought to find this fine seed everywhere. What made them gratified and surprised was that this fine seed was actually the same price as ordinary fine seeds, and there were even many places where they did not need silver. Of course, not needing silver also had a price, and this price was to remember the owner of the fine seed and be grateful to this owner from the bottom of their hearts. For the simple farmers, this was really not a big price to pay. They felt that they should be deeply grateful. So much so that when the farmers knew about this matter, when they went to get the fine seed, they had already brought a statue. Although the face was not clear, the person's name was not wrong. The 5 words, Daoist Master Xiao Hua, were clearly written on the body of the statue. Moreover, after these farmers returned, they really did pay their respects to him. Because it was the same as thanking anyone. As long as they could bring benefits to the farmers, they would sincerely thank them. Outside a mountain village in the west of Mongolia, due to the drought, many people were carrying a human-shaped statue and climbing up a steep mountain with great difficulty. It seemed like they were going to worship the statue at the top of the mountain. At this moment, a rainbow streaked across the sky from afar, and 3 cultivators landed on the peak. The one in front was a young cultivator wearing a bright red Daoist robe. Behind him were 2 elderly men. However, the 2 old men were very respectful towards this cultivator. This was because the young cultivator was at the nascent soul stage while the 2 old men were at the mid-gold core stage and early gold core stage. "Master, you should rest here for a while," an old man said respectfully. He hurriedly took out several spirit fruits from his storage bag and handed them over respectfully as well. "Okay." The young cultivator nodded and waved his hand. A dark green praying mat appeared under the shade of the mountain peak. The cultivator floated up and landed on the praying mat. When the cultivator took a bite of the spirit fruit, he casually glanced around and saw a farmer climbing halfway up the mountain. What are these mortals doing?" the cultivator asked casually. Another cultivator scanned with his divine sense and said with a smile, "The farmers are inviting the god. Right now, this place seems to be in a drought. They are inviting the Dragon King to reign." "Ha ha ha, what a bunch of ignorant idiots." The young nascent soul cultivator laughed. "How can there be a Dragon King in this world? Even if there is one, it would be a pet in our hands. Who can give them clouds and rain? Why are they begging the Dragon King? They might as well beg I." "Hee, that's right, master." The tall and thin cultivator who offered the spirit fruit smiled apologetically. "The people of this world are all stupid. How would they know that there are only immortals in this world and no gods? Moreover, they don't know how to beg the true immortal in front of them. Instead, they are praying to a fake god that doesn't exist. What a joke. How can these fools be compared to us cultivators? How can they distinguish right from wrong?" The cultivator sneered with disdain. Just as he was about to look up, he frowned. "That's not right. From what this old man knows, the dragon god that the mortals worship is the head of a python dragon. It looks exactly like the python dragon of Taiching sect. This statue seems to be in a human shape. There seems to be writing on this statue. Daoist Xiao. What kind of immortal is this Daoist Xiao? Could he be a cultivator of my Meng country?" "Hee, master." The tall and thin cultivator laughed and explained, "Since it's a Daoist, it must be a nascent soul cultivator. But if it's a Daoist, then it must be a nascent soul cultivator. But if it's a Daoist, then it must be a Daoist Xiao. From what this disciple sees, this Xiao is a surname. Maybe that Qi refinement cultivator did something and they remembered it. That's why they directly called him Daoist Xiao. How could they know that the title Daoist is not a casual title? And what Guanming said is true. That nascent soul cultivator was actually Daoist Jingru of Changbai sect. Also, master." Another cultivator hurriedly said, "When one's cultivation reaches master's level, one can understand the nature and temper one's infant. The correct way is to enter the spirit-severing stage early and peek into the heavenly Tao. Who would have nothing to do with these fools? It must be some insignificant cultivator who forcibly made a name for himself." And Daoist Jingru waved his hand and said, "There's no need to pay attention to them. Guanming, the materials you collected this time are very good and will be very useful for the magic treasure I'm refining this time. Once the magic treasure is completed, Master will reward you heavily. I don't dare. It's all because Master's luck is good. This disciple was able to find it after a bit of searching. This disciple is filial to you. Master doesn't need to worry about it. Just as Hu Guanming was about to decline modestly, a series of gongs sounded and the merciful voice of Daoist Xiao was heard. Master, take this disciple to drive them away. Hu Guanming saw Daoist Jingru frown and hurriedly said. No need, Master has rested enough. Let's go. Daoist Jingru waved his sleeve and covered the two of them. Suddenly, they turned into a rainbow and rushed into the sky. Unknowingly, a few days had passed. The three of them passed by a swamp and saw that there were many incense candles placed on the terraced fields on the hillsides. Regardless of gender, old or young, everyone was placed in front of the incense candles and kowtowed to the candles. The smoke from the incense and candles lingered on the hillside. Chapter 2162. Good heavens! Daoist Jingru's divine sense swept over the enshrined tablet and said in astonishment, Who is this Daoist Xiao? What kind of earth-shattering thing did he do? Why have I been seeing the same situation these past few days? Master, please wait a moment. Take this disciple to ask. Hu Guanfu was somewhat helpless. He really didn't want to talk to these farmers. After a while, Hu Guanfu's expression turned somewhat strange, carrying a trace of hesitation. Upon seeing this, Daoist Jingru couldn't help but be startled and said in displeasure, What's wrong? Hu Guanfu, who is this Daoist Xiao? Is he that fellow Daoist I know? Or, is he a spirit-severing senior? All right, Master knows. Hu Guanfu hesitated for a moment and said, This Daoist Xiao is Xiao Hua. It is said that he is a young cultivator. As for his specific cultivation, these fools don't know. Xiao Hua. Daoist Jingru raised his eyebrows and stood up with a hu sound. He anxiously said, Is it Xiao Hua of the Imperial Thunder Sect? This disciple doesn't know. Hu Guanfu smiled apologetically and said, Those farmers also don't know which sect Xiao Hua comes from. However, I heard that he is a tall and thin young man. Humph. Daoist Jingru's expression changed slightly. He extended his hand and a ray of light flashed. A large hand rushed over and grabbed the three farmers from the ground and lifted them high into the sky. Immortal, save us! Immortal, save us! The three farmers were greatly alarmed and their faces were deathly pale. Daoist Jingru simply didn't listen. He grabbed one of the farmers and pressed his hand on the forehead of one of them. A blood-red light flashed on his hand and a sinister expression appeared on the farmer's face. Daoist Jingru actually used a soul-searching technique on a secular person. In just a moment, a trace of a smile appeared on the farmer's face. The fear in his eyes disappeared and was replaced by a vacant look. Humph. Daoist Jingru waved his hand as if he didn't care about the farmer's life or death. He suddenly threw the farmer down from the sky. Immortal, spare us! Immortal, spare us! The other two farmers pleaded with all their might but Daoist Jingru didn't let them go. They didn't know how they had offended this nascent soul cultivator. Their souls were searched and thrown down from the sky for no reason. Xiao Hua. It really is Xiao Hua. Daoist Jingxi's face is ferocious as he roars, The last experiential learning didn't take your life, yet you still dare to come out for experiential learning. You actually dared to leave the Imperial Lightning Sect. You actually dared to come to Mongolia. It even caused such a sensation in Mongolia. You you're simply looking down on this old man. Do you think I won't be able to find you if you don't go near the Changbai sect? You. Daoist Jingru was so angry that he was speechless. Yes, Xiaohua had taken away the Grand Universe teleportation token, taken many of his medicinal pills, and even assassinated Fan Tong. This was something that Daoist Jingru, who had always been extremely protective and narcissistic, couldn't tolerate. Unfortunately, Xiaohua had obtained these items at the Feather Immortal Assembly, so Daoist Jingru had no reason to do so. Now that Xiaohua actually ran to Meng country, how could Daoist Jingru not be angry? If you're here to gain experience, then so be it. If you're sneaking around, no one will know. You actually used the banner of the Imperial Lightning Sect's Xiaohua. Those who didn't know would still be fine, but those who knew wouldn't ridicule him. Daoist Jingru claps his hand and takes out one of the storage pouches. It's actually the storage pouch that Xiaohua gave to the Changbai sect to store the remaining medicinal pills. Daoist Jingru spits a mouthful of essence blood on it, then he continuously seals with both hands and hits the storage pouch. As the storage pouch emits a bloody brilliance, that brilliance suddenly flies up and flies in the direction of the Kuei-he Sea. Good, it's actually the Kuei-he Sea. Daoist Jingru laughs, let the Kuei-he Sea be the place where you die. Daoist Jingru's figure turns into a rainbow and flies towards the bloody brilliance. A voice comes over, Hu Guanfu, you all return to the mountain for the time being. Once I kill Xiaohua, I'll return to the sect. Yes, disciple understands. Hu Guanfu looks at the other disciple. The two of them exchange a look, then their figures also fly up and return to the Changbai sect. Poor Zhong Yejing, she originally wanted to handle Xiaohua's matter beautifully and spread Xiaohua's reputation. She wanted to repay Xiaohua's great kindness and even make up for the misunderstanding between Zhongling Mountain Village and Xiaohua. However, she didn't expect that her orders would be carried out by the secular disciples of the Zhong clan without any discount, and even doubled. The result of this completion was that Xiaohua's enemy was directly in front of Xiaohua. Poor Xiaohua, at this moment, he was only slightly shocked. He actually thought that this warning sign was the difficulty of the island trial ahead. Of course, just as Xiaohua flew onto the Rainbow Bridge, there was suddenly a huge force pressing down on him. This huge force was extremely strange. It was similar to the pressure that Xiaohua encountered before, but it was also completely different. That force seemed to be tearing in all directions at the same time, and what it was tearing was Xiaohua's body. An extremely uncomfortable feeling welled up in his heart. He didn't even know how to circulate the true essence in his meridians. I understand. Xiaohua's figure fell slightly, slowly preparing to land on the Rainbow Bridge. He thought to himself, the force on the Rainbow Bridge is tearing in all directions, giving people a kind of unbalanced feeling. It's as if a cultivator is in a kind of inverted or crooked space. If it's in a normal space, true essence will circulate in the meridians as usual. In this kind of space with an illusion, true essence might not be able to coordinate with the body. It might be stagnant, or even go into a fork in the road, and thus suffer from qi deviation. The cultivators of Blood Ray Island are all body refiners. The coordination of true essence must be combined with the tempering of the body. This is their basic homework. Fellow Daoist Xiao. At this moment, Hua Heng's voice transmission came over with a hidden smile. On this Rainbow Bridge, there are some places that you can't touch, and some places you can only walk. Fellow Daoist Xiao, you can't land here. Once you land, there will be even more powerful restrictions and tests waiting for you. Ah. Xiaohua was slightly taken aback. He hurriedly circulated his magic power. At this moment, his feet were only a few inches away from the Rainbow Bridge. The ribbons on the Rainbow Bridge were already blurred, and there seemed to be some obscure spiritual power gradually forming. If it wasn't for Kwa Heng's reminder, the restrictions on the Rainbow Bridge would have been activated. Many thanks, Island Master Kwa. Xiao Hua raised his voice and said, this Xiao didn't know there were so many taboos. Moreover, this Blood Ray Island's magic power has really opened this Xiao's eyes. Ha ha ha, I'm indebted to the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples' praise. Kwa Heng also laughed and said, fellow Daoist Xiao, go ahead. There are many interesting tests on this Rainbow Bridge. Fellow Daoist can give it a try. Hearing this, Xiao Hua laughed loudly, and his figure slightly swayed. He had originally cultivated the Buddhist sect's great strength Vajra Dharma body. Even the Qi refining disciples of Blood Ray Island weren't afraid of this little thing for body refinement, so how could Xiao Hua be afraid? Without using the bright thunder escape, Xiao Hua urged the wind escape technique that he felt a moment ago. His figure very strangely floated up, and like a flowing cloud, he flew forward. His others didn't feel it, but Kwa Heng could see Xiao Hua's cultivation level. He knew that the initial restrictions on the Rainbow Bridge were somewhat strange. The stronger they were, the stronger they would be. Even if he was at the end of the Rainbow Bridge, it was impossible for him to move as fast as usual, let alone with his elegant posture. I'm afraid those few little guys will be tortured by Xiao Hua. The corners of Kwa Heng's mouth curled into a smile. He seemed to recall the arrogance of several late Foundation establishment disciples who came to his place to test him last night. Sure enough, just as Xiao Hua had thought, he had only flown a few dozen feet when the pressure suddenly rose. If Xiao Hua hadn't been prepared, or if he hadn't been able to control his true essence with ease, he would have definitely been lifted into the air by this force. Although the dozen or so Qi refining disciples had flown earlier than everyone else, their feet were now facing up, and their heads were facing down. They were adjusting their sense of direction. They were adjusting their true Qi. Motherfucker, I'm afraid this force can change at any time. Xiao Hua laughed inwardly. Otherwise, these Blood Red Island disciples who know the inside out about the trial by fire would all be caught. In the following several hundred zhang distance, that indescribable force suddenly moved up and down, suddenly to the left and suddenly to the right. At one point it was even extremely restrained, as if a large hand was grabbing onto Xiao Hua. The true essence in his body was extremely difficult to circulate, and his figure was also falling down. At this moment, several Foundation establishment disciples fell below Xiao Hua. These disciples' feet were firmly stuck on the Rainbow Bridge. No matter how they urged their magic power, they were unable to free themselves from the Rainbow Bridge. It seemed that one of them had already rolled up his Daoist robe, revealing his thick arms. That arm's bowl-like fist was precisely hitting the restriction below his feet. However, when Xiao Hua flew past this section, suddenly, another unparalleled force descended from the sky, imprisoning Xiao Hua's entire body. His true essence also stagnated, and he was simply unable to mobilize his magic power. Xiao Hua's body couldn't help but fall down. How can this be? Xiao Hua thought of the embarrassment of those Foundation establishment disciples just now, and he was shocked. Others could make a fool of themselves, but he couldn't. That was the face of the Imperial Thunder sect, making others laugh. Rise! Xiao Hua's body slightly slid forward. He didn't rely on magic power, but pure flowing cloud movement technique, and even some ethereal steps techniques. Borrowing this moment of respite, Xiao Hua shook his arms. A blood-red brilliance flashed around his body, and one could almost hear bang 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 sounds. Many of the restrictions on the Rainbow Bridge were actually broken by him. The true essence in his meridians could circulate, and Xiao Hua's flying technique could be used. You want to use restrictions to imprison this young master. Dream on. Xiao Hua was secretly pleased. His body swayed again, and incomparably dashed across the rainbow bridge. Very quickly, he turned a corner. However, when he turned the corner, he was once again stupefied in midair. Below his feet, on the rainbow bridge that was roughly several hundred zhang in front of him, there was a black mass of people moving about. It was precisely all of the Blood Ray Island disciples who had landed on the rainbow bridge. At this moment, the rainbow bridge had already transformed into a towering mountain path, and everyone was doing their best to climb. To be continued. Chapter 2163. Damn it! I didn't make a mistake. Xiaohua almost stretched out a small hand from his throat. No wonder Kua Heng said just now that there are some places that can't be landed, and some places that must be landed. This place is a place that tests the strength of the physical body. Humph. Xiaohua hardened his heart. Since this young master is already flying, I might as well not land. I'll directly fly to a high place in front and show them my power. While thinking, Xiaohua urged his magic power. Although his figure wasn't as graceful as before, it was more or less the same as an ordinary cultivator's flying technique. He flew over the heads of a group of Blood Ray Island disciples and flew to a high place on the rainbow bridge. Io, someone can fly. Which senior brother is this? Immediately, someone clamored. To be honest, they already knew that one couldn't fly in this place. All magic power was restricted, and only the physical body could be controlled. Perhaps some people had tried before but failed. Now that they saw someone actually fly over, how could they not be surprised? Good, as expected of a thunder-controlling sect disciple. He's really different. The disciple who recognized Xiaohua panted as he ran and climbed while looking up at the sky and sighing with emotion. Xiaohua's little tail gradually rose up. However, after he flew for nearly 3 minutes, below him were several late-stage Foundation establishment disciples. Xiaohua originally wanted to see their envious gazes, but one of them actually had some ridicule in his eyes. Strange, is there something wrong? Xiaohua immediately became suspicious and hurriedly released his divine sense. However, this place naturally also restricted divine sense. Without waiting for his divine sense to leave his body, a powerful hurricane descended from the sky and blew toward Xiaohua, wanting to blow him straight out of the rainbow bridge. I say. Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why can't you even give me a chance to steal a trick? If it was someone else, this hurricane would probably blow them away in one breath. However, Xiaohua had just learned the flowing cloud movement technique, which was the wind escape technique. This wind was admittedly powerful, but it was precisely what Xiaohua wanted. Xiaohua controlled his body to descend while flying forward. When he landed steadily, he had already landed in front of everyone. It can also be like this. The few late-stage Foundation establishment disciples in front were somewhat stupefied. Even in their dreams, they didn't think that this punishment technique would actually send Xiaohua flying so far. I'll run. Xiaohua landed on the ground and laughed heartily. As his feet glided, he dashed towards the top of the rainbow bridge. His figure was precisely ethereal steps. The rainbow bridge was still under their feet. Stepping on it was no different from stepping on a beach. It seemed like there was sand around their feet, making it difficult to walk, let alone walk up. The group of Foundation establishment and aura refining disciples were like ordinary farmers climbing a mountain. Their foreheads were covered in sweat as they climbed with great difficulty. Unlike the disciples of Scarlet Island, the tall and skinny lad who was leading the group was actually walking in an indescribable pace. His waist was slightly swaying and he seemed to have a rhythm to his movements. It looked like it was still rather easy. Xiaohua. How interesting. Kua Heng could naturally see everything that was happening on the rainbow bridge. He narrowed his eyes slightly and said with a smile while feeling surprised. After passing the peak of the Rainbow Bridge, there was another stretch of slow road. Xiaohua saw that the restriction on his body had disappeared and hesitated. He didn't know if he should use his magic power to fly or continue using the ethereal steps. Fellow Daoist Xiao, good luck. At this moment, a burly disciple of Scarlet Island caught up from behind. Without any hesitation, he activated his magic power and rushed forward at an extremely fast speed. Pang! It was as if he had broken through a restriction. With a flash of brilliance, the fatty disappeared without a trace. Damn it, what's going on now? Xiaohua looked at the empty rainbow bridge in front of him in a daze. Fellow Daoist Xiao, why don't you hurry over? Immediately after, several late-stage Foundation establishment cultivators also caught up and one of them asked curiously. If fellow Daoist Xiao doesn't want to go, we'll go first. Seeing that Xiaohua didn't speak, the two people behind him hurriedly activated their magic power and rushed towards the restriction. Oh, fellow Daoist Xiao, hurry up and go. Use your fastest speed to rush towards the restriction. The cultivator who reminded him earlier didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly said, the greater the impact, the further the distance the restriction will teleport. Moreover, the quota is limited. He saw that the disciple had also disappeared. Xiaohua no longer hesitated. He activated his magic power and used the bright thunder escape. With a boom, he rushed into the restriction. Rumble. A series of rumbling sounds came from the Rainbow Bridge and the entire bridge shook slightly. A few of the Scarlet Island disciples who were climbing the peak actually lost their balance and fell down with a few plop sounds. It didn't matter if they sat down, but they saw a red brilliance flash above the Rainbow Bridge. Their bodies were completely submerged by the Rainbow Bridge as if they had fallen into the sea, gradually leaking out from under the Rainbow Bridge. Who is so shameless to do such a thing? Several Scarlet Island disciples who were eliminated shouted in exasperation. Imperial Thunder Sect is indeed the Imperial Thunder Sect. Hua Hang sighed and shook his head slightly. Fortunately, I didn't listen to the instigation of those little bastards. They wanted me to personally go down and compete with this guy. They were simply looking for their own humiliation. This flying technique is my shortcoming. Compared to this guy, I'm afraid I'm not even fit to carry his shoes. However, I heard from Hua Qiao, that Xiaohua is a cultivator with a benevolent heart. Moreover, he has a request for my Scarlet Island. Yes, he can even bring great benefits to my Scarlet Island. Hua Hang thought inwardly. Unfortunately, Hua Qiao, and Rhyming have already made a hard oath. They can't speak blindly. They can only remind me to treat Xiaohua well. Moreover, they also vaguely warned me not to provoke him. Look at Xiaohua again. Today, he participated in some island trial for no reason. Isn't it just to give me a warning? Hee, how many years have I lived? How can I not see through this? However, what good things can Xiaohua have to make my Scarlet Island happy? Sigh, Xiaohua actually charged into the huge stone array. This guy, how fast is his flying speed? This huge stone array, if one doesn't have the strength of a late gold core realm, it's impossible to pass through the restriction. This is bad. This late gold core realm strength is only for my Scarlet Island disciples. He is a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. However, this huge stone array is hidden within the Rainbow Bridge. Even I can't control it unless I interrupt the entire trial. This is bad, this is bad, this Imperial Thunder Sect disciple will be smashed into a meat patty. I'm in trouble. Hua Hang muttered. His expression changed rapidly. His figure flew, and he rapidly flew toward the opposite side of Scarlet Island. As for Xiaohua, he felt a sudden pressure on his body. Traces of black and white light flashed before his eyes. Xiaohua knew that what the Scarlet Island disciple said was true. He was indeed transported. They emitted a sharp sound of wind as they attacked Xiaohua from 3 directions. Naturally, the size of these 3 meteors was slightly larger than the previous one. Although Xiaohua didn't have any magic power at this time, he still had the ethereal steps and the Big Dipper Divine Fist. Dealing with these meteors wasn't a problem. Once the number of meteors reached 6, Xiaohua would be unable to deal with them by relying on the Devil Hammer alone. Therefore, Xiaohua didn't hesitate to take out the Great Wisdom Sword. He used the Heavenly Staff technique to deal with the 7 meteors that were pouncing towards Xiaohua from all directions. The meteors in the starry sky were quite ingenious. Although 7 or 8 huge meteors smashed towards the small Xiaohua at the same time, there was an extremely subtle gap between them. Not only did they smash at different angles, but when they got close, they absolutely wouldn't touch each other. When Xiaohua waved the Heavenly Staff technique, he couldn't stop one strike after another for even a moment. This was because as long as there was a slight pause, the following meteors would immediately smash into his body. When there were 24 meteors in a group, Xiaohua finished smashing the first 22 meteors. A wave of exhaustion suddenly came from his body. This was something that Xiaohua had never felt before. This is bad. Xiaohua secretly complained in his heart. He knew that as long as he finished smashing the 24 meteors in a group, the comfortable feeling afterwards would immediately drive away this feeling of exhaustion. Or perhaps, he could also rely on the flow of the Big Dipper Divine Fist to eliminate this exhaustion. However, the left and right meteors were right in front of him. Where would he find the free time? Just at this moment, Xiaohua suddenly had a flash of inspiration. He slightly closed his eyes, and the Heart Sutra of the Wind Escape technique flowed. He comprehended the 2 incoming boulders from the left and right at the same time. As the corner of Xiaohua's mouth faintly rose, he very confidently raised his hand slightly and raised the Great Wisdom Sword horizontally. With a loud bang, the 2 meteors smashed into the 2 ends of the Great Wisdom Sword at almost the same time. The 2 boulders shattered at the same time. Xiaohua didn't use the slightest bit of strength. However, the comfortable feeling of Xiaohua's chi wings also didn't appear at the same time. Just when Xiaohua wanted to use the Big Dipper Divine Fist, he saw the 2 shattered boulders suddenly swirl up in the air, separately forming 2 vortexes that enveloped Xiaohua. Ouch! Xiaohua stared blankly. Just when he was about to dodge, he saw the 2 vortexes faintly flickering with black and white brilliance. It was the legendary array that was about to activate. Thus, Xiaohua didn't resist anymore, allowing the vortexes of shattered rocks to envelop him. After the brilliance flashed, Xiaohua's figure disappeared from this space. And the hundreds of boulders that had previously disappeared gradually flashed again. Good. Just when Xiaohua's figure appeared on the Rainbow Bridge, Kua Hang's praise rang in his ears. Xiaohua composed himself and saw Kua Hang standing outside the Rainbow Bridge, looking at him with a kind of admiration on his face. Fellow Daoist praise. Xiaohua complained as soon as they met. Why does this Rainbow Bridge sound have so many taboos? Why didn't you tell me in advance? You made this Xiaohua very embarrassed. Fellow Daoist Xiao, you really hid your strength well. Kua Hang simply ignored Xiaohua's complaints, his eyes flashing with a strange light as he said, My Blood-Red Island's boulder array hasn't been broken in for thousands of years, no, it should be for tens of thousands of years. I remember in the ancient records that the last person who entered was a late Gold Core stage senior whose cultivation was extremely close to the nascent soul stage. Ah. Xiao Hua stared blankly. He didn't expect that just by casually flying, he would cause such a big trouble. Hee, fellow Taoist praise is a bit exaggerated. Xiao Hua laughed mischievously and said, just now, weren't there a few late Foundation establishment disciples who were transported together with this Xiao? Could it be that they didn't enter this boulder array? My praise isn't exaggerated at all. Hua Heng laughed and said, the restrictions that were taken out just now were to test the degree of body tempering of my Blood Red Island's disciples. Whoever can fly with the greatest weight can be transported into the corresponding array. This array has the Yellow Wind Array, Invisible Rain Array, Open Fire Array, Flying Snow Array, Fine Metal Array, and Boulder Array. If every disciple who enters the array can pass the test of the array, not only can they obtain certain benefits from the array, they can also be transported across the Rainbow Bridge according to the power of the array. Among them, the Yellow Wind Array, Invisible Rain Array, and Open Fire Array are open arrays, while the other three are hidden arrays. Without the cultivation of Gold Core Stage and above, it is impossible to enter. Those little brats probably learned some tricks and know that as long as they fly fast, their speed increases and the weight of the impact on the restrictions will also increase. That's why they tried their best to fly. With their cultivation, at most, they can enter the Invisible Rain Array. I'm afraid that they can't even enter the Open Fire Array. This old man didn't expect that fellow Taoist Xiao could actually enter the Boulder Array directly. Hua Heng said with interest, that Boulder Array is something that even this old man didn't have the chance to enter. What benefits did fellow Taoist Xiao get inside? How many boulders did you dodge? Dodged? Xiao Hua was taken aback. Chapter 2165. This was because according to the records, Blood Ray Island's Chi Refinement disciples were considered to have passed the test by passing 3 layers of boulders. Passing 6 layers of boulders was considered to have passed the Foundation Establishment stage. Passing 9 layers of boulders was considered to have passed the body tempering stage of the Golden Core realm. However, he didn't expect Xiao Hua to actually shatter 14 boulders. In other words, Xiao Hua's body refining technique was even more powerful than that late-stage Golden Core Realm senior who was about to conceive a nascent soul. Hua Heng knew that Xiao Hua could only say less and absolutely not more about the numbers Xiao Hua mentioned. This guy, with such a body refining technique, why did he come to my Blood Red Island? Hua Heng was even more curious. But seeing Xiao Hua looking at the front of the Rainbow Bridge and about to fly again, Hua Heng couldn't help but laugh. Fellow Taoist Xiao, what's wrong? You still want to continue the trial? My Blood Red Island's trial is body refining technique and magic. Fellow Taoist's body refining technique is so powerful, not to mention your magic power. Why do you still need to participate in the trial? Hua Heng curled his lips in his heart. You've already shown your strength, and I also know. What's the point of continuing the trial? Oh, Xiao Hua laughed. There's a fellow Taoist called Hua Yu on your island. He invited me to a battle in Departure Realm Heaven. I can't not go. Ha ha ha, Hua Heng laughed. Departure Realm Heaven is in the middle of the Rainbow Bridge. Fellow Taoist Xiao has already crossed 80% of the bridge. How can you return? Besides, Hua Yu chose Departure Realm Heaven because he wanted to use the illusion to confine his magic power and divine sense. He could only rely on his physical strength to fight. His plan. I'm afraid he's also part of fellow Taoist Zhao's plan, right? I can't go back. Xiao Hua was stunned. He turned around and flew back. Who would have thought that just as he flew one zhang, a huge force blocked his front, preventing him from retreating. This huge force was completely different from before. It was extremely powerful and couldn't be broken by relying on his physical body alone. Fellow Daoist Xiao, you don't need to try anymore. Hua Hang laughed. After crossing half of the Rainbow Bridge, you can't go back unless fellow Daoist Xiao's magic power surpasses nascent soul. That's just one realm higher than me. Hee, so that's how it is. Xiao Hua laughed mischievously and said, in that case, the disciple closest to this Xiao. Hua Hang nodded and said, yes, we just passed through the leaving realm heaven and reached the halfway point of the Rainbow Bridge. Fellow Daoist Xiao, you don't have to bother with them. Come, fellow Daoist Xiao, we will wait at the end. This old man wants to know why fellow Daoist Xiao is looking for the Sunset Island. Oh my, could it be that fellow Daoist Hua knows where the Sunset Island is? Xiao Hua was pleasantly surprised. That's right. Hua Hang nodded and said, I'm afraid I'm the only one who knows about this in QC. Actually, this old man is also surprised. Where did fellow Daoist Xiao learn of the setting sun island? Now that Xiao Hua had shown his strength, he didn't stay on the Rainbow Bridge to train. Instead, he flew out of the Rainbow Bridge and followed Hua Hang to the end of the Rainbow Bridge. Landing in front of a cave, Hua Hang looked at Xiao Hua and said, yesterday, Xiao told this old man that fellow Daoist Xiao is looking for the Sunset Island. This old man was very surprised. The Sunset Island has been there for hundreds of thousands of years, maybe even millions of years. No one mentioned it. Why did fellow Daoist suddenly look for the Sunset Island? Hundreds of thousands of years. Xiao Hua was stunned. What's wrong with the Sunset Island? Fellow Daoist Xiao hasn't answered this old man's question, right? Hua Hang didn't answer but asked instead. Xiao Hua nodded and said, this old man got some information from the city lord of Haoming City. This old man is looking for a kind of cultivation technique, which can only be found on the Sunset Island, so, Haoming City? Hua Hang seemed to be thinking about something. After a while, he stared at Xiao Hua and said, fellow Daoist Xiao, what kind of cultivation technique do you need? Fellow Daoist Hua, you only need to tell this old man where the Sunset Island is. Why do you need to know what cultivation technique this old man is looking for? Xiao Hua said hesitantly. Actually. Hua Hang hesitated for a moment and said, actually, the Bloody Red Island is the Sunset Island. Well, you can't say it like that. However, fellow Daoist Xiao, just think of the Bloody Red Island as the Sunset Island. Xiao Hua was even more shocked, but he immediately understood. Of course, the Bloody Red Island was built on the body refining technique. Every male disciple had extraordinary strength. Wasn't that the effect of bone tempering? If it was purely for the body refining technique, why would the male disciples have such a high level of cultivation? He really couldn't see the tall mountain for a leaf. Good, Xiao Hua clapped his hands and said, since fellow Daoist Hua is so frank, then this old man won't hide it. This old man is looking for the Sunset Island's body refining technique. Strange. Hua Hang laughed and pointed at Xiao Hua, saying, fellow Daoist Xiao's body refining technique is actually more profound than this old man's. This old man doesn't think that my Bloody Red Island's body refining technique can be of any help to fellow Daoist Xiao. Alas, actually. Only now did Xiao Hua realize that he had been led astray by Hua Hang. He smiled bitterly and said, this old man was wrong just now. This old man actually wants the Sunset Island's bone tempering technique. Bone tempering technique. Hua Hang's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. Why does fellow Daoist Xiao want the bone tempering technique? This old man cultivates the lightning evasion technique of my Imperial Thunder sect, and it needs the help of external forces to temper my bones. Otherwise, the lightning evasion technique can't reach great success. Xiaohua said without hesitation. This old man also thought of many ways. Later, I got the news of the Sunset Island from Haoming City's Yaohongjin. Only then did I come all the way here. This old man didn't expect that Qua Chiao and Qua Rhyming were both descendants of the Sunset Island. To tell you the truth, fellow Daoist Xiao, the bone tempering technique is a secret technique of my bloody red island. Qua Hang sighed and said, however, this bone tempering technique is extremely difficult to cultivate. If you only cultivate the bone tempering technique, you can't reach great success. Therefore, my ancestor combined the bone tempering technique with the help of other body tempering techniques. Only then could the bone tempering technique of my bloody red island have some success. However, look at my physique and the other male cultivators of my bloody red island. These are the drawbacks of cultivating the bone tempering technique and the body tempering technique. Fellow Daoist Xiao, do you think this bone tempering technique will have an effect on your lightning evasion technique? Yes, Xiaohua nodded without hesitation. Qua Hang thought for a moment and said, this old man already understands your intention. Then, what will you use to exchange with this old man? From what Xiao has said, you have something that this old man urgently needs. However, this old man can't think of anything after thinking about it for a long time. With a smile on his face, Xiaohua suddenly flicked his big sleeve and covered Qua Hang from top to bottom. A kind of confining force was generated from his big sleeve, which was extremely similar to the one on the Rainbow Bridge. All of a sudden, all of Qua Hang's magic power was confined. Ah! Whirled in the sleeve. Qua Hang was suddenly startled. Soon after, he was wild with joy. At the same time, the red brilliance around his body flashed extremely quickly, and the big sleeve of his Daoist robe was also raised. Chapter 2166. Unfortunately, under Xiaohua's heaven and earth sleeve technique, Qua Hang's Daoist robe was like a broken bag that couldn't be opened. The heaven and earth sleeve technique that Qua Hang was usually proud of actually didn't work. Just as Qua Hang's expression slightly changed, Xiaohua swung his sleeve, and that restrictive force immediately dissipated as if it had never appeared and was withdrawn into Xiaohua's sleeve. So that's how it is. Qua Hang clapped his hands and said, this old man was wondering what could make this old man submit. It turns out that fellow Daoist Xiao obtained the complete heaven and earth sleeve technique of my blood red island. Hee, fellow Daoist Qua, you're wrong. Xiaohua shook his head and said, this old man also copied a jade slip in the Imperial Thunder sect. This heaven and earth sleeve technique doesn't completely belong to Blood Red Island anymore. This. Qua Hang's expression was somewhat uncertain. After pondering for a moment, he sighed and said, presumably, Xiao has already told fellow Daoist Xiao that the heaven and earth sleeve technique of my Blood Red Island is already incomplete. Yes, that's right. Xiaohua also secretly nodded and answered. All right. Qua Hang said again, this old man won't talk about the heaven and earth sleeve technique. Since fellow Daoist Xiao has already copied a copy in the Imperial Thunder sect, presumably, the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect will also practice it in the future. As for the bone tempering technique, fellow Daoist Xiao definitely can't leave a copy in your sect. Hearing this, Xiaohua was overjoyed and said with a smile, not only the bone tempering technique, but also the heaven and earth sleeve technique. This old man can also promise that only the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect's myriad Thunder Valley can practice it. Great! Although Qua Hang said it was great, he was really bitter in his heart. Of course, this old man took the thing that he lost and wanted his own thing, but he couldn't refuse. Firstly, this old man had already left a copy of the thing that he lost, so it was meaningless for him to keep this old man here. Secondly, he didn't have the confidence to keep this old man here. Fellow Daoist Xiao, please keep this matter a secret for this old man. You can't let the disciples of Blood Red Island know about it. Kua Hang clapped his hands and took out a slightly larger jade slip and said, Bone tempering technique is only the foundation of another technique of Blood Red Island that has been completely lost, but now it has already become a secret technique, unique technique of Blood Red Island. If this disciple finds out that this old man has leaked the information, I'm afraid he won't let it go. Hee, fellow Daoist Kua. You traded an insignificant instance for the complete jade slip of Blood Ray Island's long-lost universe within sleeve. In that case, fellow Daoist praising is a meritorious service to Blood Ray Island. Who would spout nonsense? Xiao Hua already knew from Kua Chiao, how important this world in sleeve was to Scarlet Island. Naturally, he ignored Kua Hang's nonsense. He took the jade slip and immersed his divine sense into it. After a short moment, a smile appeared on the corners of Xiao Hua's mouth. He clapped his hands and took out a jade slip as well, and then he said with a smile, Fellow Daoist Kua, please take a look. Kua Hang's hands trembled slightly, almost imperceptibly. He took the jade slip and hurriedly checked it. After a long while, Kua Hang let out a long sigh. He put the jade slip into his storage bag and said, I've finally completed the sleeve cosmos technique. I've fulfilled the wishes of several generations of island masters. As he spoke, he bowed towards Xiao Hua and said, Many thanks, fellow Daoist Xiao. Ha, no need, no need. Xiao Hua hurriedly supported Kua Hang. I also want to thank. However, before Xiao Hua could finish speaking, another burst of indescribable palpitation surged into his heart. It interrupted Xiao Hua's words. My goodness, what is it now? Xiao Hua raised his eyes and looked towards the Rainbow Bridge. Oh, a late-stage Foundation establishment disciple has already come out. Kua Heng's heart was extremely refreshed. He pointed at the pitch-black hole and said, That's not right. When I entered the Rainbow Bridge just now, I felt some palpitation. I thought the Rainbow Bridge's restrictions were somewhat powerful. Xiao Hua thought to himself. Now that I've already come out of the Rainbow Bridge, why do I still feel palpitation? This feeling should be coming from the hand of karma. It has nothing to do with the Buddha Sarira. Could it be that there's some karma entangling me? Fellow Daoist Xiao, how can you go back on your word? A loud and clear voice was heard. I waited for you in the departure heaven for a long time. I didn't expect you to leave the trial so early. In that case, your youth-retaining grass should have lost to eye. When Xiao Hua raised his eyes, he saw that it was Kua Yu. He was somewhat angrily shouting at him. Kua Yu! Don't be rude to fellow Daoist Xiao. Kua Heng scolded. Fellow Daoist Xiao came out of the huge stone array. According to the rules of the previous trial, the first place of this trial belongs to him. Fellow Daoist Xiao felt that he was an outsider and didn't want to compete with you. That's why he came here to talk to this old man first. Tell me, if he went to the departure heaven, would you be his opponent? Moreover, even if he didn't go to the departure heaven, could you be considered to have one? Ah! Huge stone array. Is it the legendary huge stone array hidden in the Rainbow Bridge? Not only was Kua Yu shocked, but the other late-stage Foundation establishment disciples were also incomparably astonished. Would this old man lie to you? Kua Heng said with a smile. Alas, that's right. Kua Yu sighed and hung his head dejectedly. Fellow Daoist Xiao passed through the departure heaven first. This servant has already lost. This token is fellow Daoist Xiao's. As he said that, Kua Yu patted his storage bag and gave a pig-headed token to Xiao Hua. What is this? Kwa Heng obviously saw it for the first time. This disciple also doesn't know. I just picked it up in the sea a long time ago. Kwa Yu said helplessly. Don't look at this Xiao. This Xiao also doesn't know. This Xiao just thought it was fun. Xiao Hua took the token and hurriedly waved his hand. But how could Kwa Heng believe him? This youth-retaining grass is for fellow Taoist Kwa. Xiao Hua generously gave the youth-retaining grass to Kwa Yu. Really? In that case, many thanks, fellow Taoist Xiao. Kwa Yu was even more overjoyed and reached out to take the youth-retaining grass. Just when everyone was a bit envious, roar, an earth-shaking clear sound rang out, as if tens of thousands of bulls were roaring. The entire Scarlet Island was shaken. This sound was extremely similar to the sound Xiao Hua heard when the Great Flag Reef sunk into the Great Flag Reef. This is bad. Xiao Hua was greatly alarmed. He knew that the warning in his heart just now was probably the heavenly might triggered by this sound. Thus, without hesitation, he immediately flew up and shouted, "Fellow Taoist Kwa, I'm afraid this Scarlet Island is about to sink." Previously, this was the situation that Xiao and I encountered on the Great Flag Reef. Quickly gather the disciples and escape. Immediately after, Xiao Hua sent out his divine sense and transmitted it to Xue Xue. Sure enough, before the sound disappeared from their ears, the Scarlet Island was greatly shaken. It was almost visible to the naked eye. Withdrawal. Seeing such a situation, how could Kwa Heng dare to hesitate? His figure quickly flew up, and he unceasingly struck the pitch-black hole on the rainbow bridge in front of him with magic seals. A blood-colored halo was repeatedly emitted from the hole, and like flowing water, it quickly circled around the entire rainbow bridge. All the disciples training in the rainbow bridge revealed their bodies in an extremely terrifying manner. Kwa Chiao and Kwa Ryming's faces were even more ashen. No one knew the power of heaven and earth better than them. Rise, just when Kwa Heng stretched out his hand, like an eagle's claw, to grab the sea pearl from the disappearing rainbow bridge. Suddenly, in the direction of the setting sun outside the Scarlet Island, the sea surface within a range of several dozen li abruptly surged like boiling water. At this moment, the Scarlet Island was unexpectedly calm. An incomparably pure spiritual energy of heaven and earth overflowed from the sea surface. Along with the sea breeze, it blew to the Scarlet Island. This. Xiao Hua was originally looking for Xue Xue. Just as he was about to flee, he smelled something fresh from his nose and mouth. He immediately operated his cultivation method, and he felt that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was actually several times more than usual. He was slightly stunned. Buzz buzz, like thousands of wasps flapping their wings, it was emitted from the bottom of the sea to the west of the Scarlet Island. Quickly look. Sword ruler fish beast. A sharp-eyed disciple was the first to see the sea beast in the surging sea foam. Before his voice fell, many strange sea beast corpses gushed out from the sea foam. Strange. Xiao Hua's divine sense swept out again. Unfortunately, the several dozen li of sea area seemed to be confined, and his divine sense couldn't explore at all. It was the same as the sinking of the Great Flag Reef. It was just that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was being absorbed that day, but now, it was actually gushing out. No way, the Great Flag Reef was brought here. Xiao Hua looked at Xue Xue in astonishment. Xue Xue was naturally also very surprised. Don't worry. Don't search for the sea beasts. Kwa Heng saw that some disciples were eager to give it a try and immediately warned. Then, Kwa Heng patted the sea pearl again, and several blood-red flames flew out, hitting various parts of the Scarlet Island. With a wave of spiritual energy, the Scarlet Island's defensive array was activated to the extreme. Everyone stood in the air above the Scarlet Island, quietly looking at the vast sea area in the west. The corpses of various sea beasts were scattered all over, and in the surging waves, it was like a pot of meat soup. Another 5 minutes passed, and a smear of blood red rippled in the entire several dozen li of sea area. Reflecting the setting sun, it was incomparably bloody. Ah, sunset! Sunset Island! Kwa Hang was so surprised that he couldn't close his mouth and couldn't help but groan. What? Sunset Island. Xiao Hua wasn't far from Kwa Hang, and when he heard this, he couldn't help but be shocked. Isn't the Scarlet Island Sunset Island? No, Kwa Hang said that the Scarlet Island can be called Sunset Island. Just as Xiao Hua was thinking, that blood-red color came from under the sea. It was actually a piece of land. Following a loud buzzing sound, a piece of land that was several dozen li darker than the Scarlet Island rose from under the sea. It was to the west of the Scarlet Island, in the direction of the setting sun. After the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, that vibration gradually stopped. Only then did the rising Sunset Island stop. At this time, Xiao Hua could already see clearly that the entire Sunset Island was in the shape of a huge oval. Most of it bulged above the sea surface, and it was really similar to the setting sun on the horizon with a small part of it falling below the sea surface. Wasn't this Sunset Island? Things didn't end here. After the sound stopped, a blood-red brilliance flashed on the Sunset Island, and strands after strands, like a string of fireworks, came toward the Scarlet Island. Chapter 2167. Wu, a whimper, which seemed to be from the formation of Blood-Red Island, also emitted a blood-red brilliance. Not only did it resonate with the brilliance of Sunset Island, but it also flowed in the direction of Sunset Island. Fellow Daoist Xiao, help me. Suddenly, Kwa Hang hurriedly shouted. Ah! What's wrong? Xiao Hua heard the voice and looked over. He saw the ocean pearl in Kwa Hang's hand overflowing with red light and growing bigger and bigger. Kwa Hang urged his magic power to control it, but the ocean pearl actually showed signs of flying away. Kwa Hang's magic power surged. Obviously, he had pushed his true essence to the extreme. Damn it, you're a golden core cultivator. Xiao Hua cursed in his heart. However, since he was here, he didn't dare to be careless. He hurriedly flew over and waved his big sleeve. The heaven and earth sleeve technique suddenly covered the ocean pearl. Xiao Hua was indeed smart. The heaven and earth sleeve technique was really the technique to control the ocean pearl. Wherever Xiao Hua's magic power went, the ocean pearl's brilliance flickered slightly. Then, like an obedient child, it slowly shrank. Xiao Hua suddenly had a feeling that if he used the heaven and earth sleeve technique a little more, he could take the ocean pearl from Kwa Hang's hands. Xiao Hua's brows swept. Sure enough, Kwa Hang's face was extremely ugly, and his eyes were slightly trembling. Ha ha ha! Xiao Hua waved his sleeve and shrank his magic power by half. He laughed. Fellow Daoist Kwa, you're testing me. Kwa Hang's eyes suddenly opened. His other sleeve also covered the ocean pearl. His expression calmed down and he forced a smile. Right now, I'm afraid only fellow Daoist Xiao can help me in the entire Blood-Red Island. If not for fellow Daoist Xiao's help, this Blood-Red Island, hee. Kwa Hang didn't say much. He urged his magic power and took the ocean pearl into his hand. Xiao Hua also took the opportunity to withdraw the heaven and earth sleeve technique. Heaven and earth sleeve technique. Kwa Yu and the others were very close to Xiao Hua, so they naturally saw it. Everyone's eyes were wild with joy. Ha ha ha! Kwa Hang controlled the ocean pearl and laughed. I have good news to tell you. Thanks to fellow Taoist Xiaohua of the Imperial Thunder Sect for the righteousness of returning my blood-red island, no, my setting sun island's long-lost heaven and earth sleeve technique. Woo, everyone cheered. After a while, Hua Heng pointed at the Sunset Island and said, the universe in the sleeve technique has returned to the Sunset Island. The reappearance of the Sunset Island is a joyous occasion for the disciples of the Sunset Island. Seeing that all the disciples were puzzled, Hua Heng said in a clear voice, I'm sure all of you know. My Hua clan is an ancient clan. Although the bloodline is already thin, it is still an ancient bloodline. It is different from those people in the Kuwait he see who are selling dog meat under false pretenses. Ha ha ha, the group of Scarlet Island's disciples laughed loudly. Hua Heng was in an extremely good mood. He waved his hand and said, actually, my Hua clan didn't live on Scarlet Island in the beginning, but on Sunset Island. That is, the island in front of us that looks like the setting sun. At the same time, it was also the most powerful force in the Kuwait Sea. This blood-red island is only a place for the disciples of our Hua family to cultivate and train themselves. At the same time, it is also one of the defensive formations of our Sunset Island. Millions of years ago, or even tens of millions of years ago, the records in the clan are no longer very detailed. This Sunset Island disappeared for some unknown reason. My Hua clan will disappear as well. Only a few disciples who went out were lucky enough to escape and moved to this blood-red island to live and reproduce. Now that the Sunset Island has reappeared in the Kuwait Sea, it is the place where my Hua clan's disciples will rise. It is also the beginning of my Hua clan's disciples dominating the Kuwait Sea. The group of disciples felt their blood boil after hearing Hua Heng's words. Xiao Hua, who was at the side, was very emotional. Damn it. Being an island lord or sect master is really not to be underestimated. Just this ability to talk is more powerful than any cultivation or realm. I'm afraid I don't have a chance in this lifetime. With this ability of mine, I can only deceive little girls and tease little girls. It's really too difficult for this young master to deceive these old men. Alright, you all can go now and search for all the sea beasts in the surrounding sea. This is a gift from the ancestors of my Sunset Island. Hua Heng waved his hand and said, also, as a guest of my Sunset Island, fellow Taoist Xiao happened to encounter a joyous occasion of my Sunset Island. I would like to invite fellow Taoist Xiao to be a guest of my Sunset Island and accompany me to the island first. Good, the group of disciples, especially the few late-stage Foundation Establishment disciples, all cheered, let alone Hua Chiao, and Hua Rhyming. Fellow Taoist Hua, this is somewhat difficult for me, right? Xiao Hua naturally knew the role of a guest and said with a frown. Fellow Taoist Xiao, there is no need for you to do anything for my Sunset Island. Even if the Sunset Island has something to do, they will definitely not invite fellow Taoist Xiao over. Hua Heng immediately transmitted his voice. Sunset Island has just appeared. I want to go to the island with the other elders. Those who are not cultivators of Sunset Island are not allowed to set foot on an island without cultivators. Otherwise, this island will be the first place where cultivators set foot on. I can't completely control Haiju now. If fellow Taoist Xiao doesn't help me, how can I control Sunset Island? While they were talking, several old cultivators flew over from afar. They were all late-stage Foundation Establishment and early-stage Golden Core cultivators. Presumably, they were the elders of Blood Ray Island who were attracted by the appearance of Sunset Island. I see. Xiao Hua rolled his eyes and asked again, in that case, if I become a guest of Sunset Island, then I can cultivate all the cultivation techniques of Sunset Island. Hua Heng saw Xiao Hua bargaining and said with a bitter smile, of course. However, apart from universe within sleeve and bone tempering technique, what other cultivation techniques do the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect covet? Didn't fellow Daoist Kwa say before? This bone tempering technique is the foundation of another cultivation technique. This cultivation technique isn't universe within sleeve, right? Xiao Hua said proudly. Oh, that. When Kwa Hang heard this, a trace of relief appeared on his face. However, at the same time, he was also regretful. He shook his head and said, I spoke too much. However, at that time, I also didn't know that Sunset Island would appear. That cultivation technique should be on Sunset Island. I only saw the records in the clan. As for whether it exists or not, fellow Daoist Xiao can cultivate it, that's not something I can know. Good. Xiao Hua immediately nodded. If fellow Daoist Kwa agrees, then I will agree. Can this old man not agree? Kwa Hang smiled bitterly as he looked at the group of excited disciples who were heading to the sea area to fish up sea beasts. There were also several elders who were about to arrive. What other choice do I have? Very good. Xiao Hua raised his hand and the two clapped their hands. Immediately, several elders flew over. Kwa Hang told them the secret. Those elders were so excited that tears flowed down their old faces. Xiao Hua also greeted them. Chapter 2168. Since he was a guest elder, Xiao Hua was also a member of the Sunset Island and a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect, so the elders were very happy. Xiao Hua accompanied Kwa Hang and prepared to board the Sunset Island. Xue Xue followed Kwa Chiao to board the island. At this moment, the entire defensive formation of the Sunset Island was open. The entire island was wrapped in a blood-red brilliance like a cocoon. Naturally, this brilliance was now connected with the light of the bloody red island. Kwa Hang flew to the sky above the Sunset Island, patted his hand, and took out a blood-red jade slip from his storage bag. He looked at it carefully and released his divine sense to scan the entire island no less than 10 times. Only then did he come to the east side with some hesitation. Because the blood-red brilliance of the entire Sunset Island was the same, he couldn't see where the formation was. If Kwa Hang didn't have the jade slip left by his clan, he probably wouldn't have found this place. It should be here. Kwa Hang pointed his hand, but his finger was blocked by the blood-red brilliance. Xiao Hua had been frowning since he saw the blood-red brilliance. Now, after hearing Kwa Hang's explanation, he shook his head and said, Island Master Kwa, I have a question that I want to ask you. Elder Xiao, please ask. Kwa Hang said without hesitation, Elder Xiao is now qualified to know the secret of the Sunset Island. There's no need to hide anything. Xiao Hua smiled as he pointed at the restriction and said, Island Master has already said that the Sunset Island has probably disappeared for millions or even tens of millions of years. In other words, the Sunset Island sank into the Kwai Sea for at least millions of years. Island Master Kwa, do you think the restriction of the Sunset Island can still be so intact under the Kwai Sea? Oh, right. Kwa Hang was shocked. He slapped his forehead and said, I was a bit too happy. I actually overlooked this matter. Sure enough, the expressions of the other elders and the few late-stage Foundation establishment disciples also changed. No one knew the power of the Kwai Sea better than them. Not to mention the bottom of the sea, even on the surface of the sea, the restriction of the bloody red island relied on spirit stones to absorb the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to maintain its defense. The Sunset Island sank into the sea. How great was the pressure of the sea? 10,000 years might be enough, but 100,000 years or even 1,000,000 years later, the restrictions on the Sunset Island would definitely not be intact. It would be normal if it was a dilapidated sunset island that had been eroded by the sea, but how could there be nothing strange about the appearance of such an intact sunset island? They were only focused on being happy and thinking about the return of their ancestors' property. They really didn't think about this. What does Elder Xiao mean? Hua Hang's face was gloomy and uncertain. He had asked Xiao Hua to take action and become an elder because he wanted to quickly grasp the Sunset Island in his hands. He was afraid that a long delay would cause more trouble and cause other islands to covet it. Xiao Hua shook his head. This is just my guess. I really don't know how to deal with it. Island Master Hua is the master of the island. This matter should be decided by the island master. Hua Hang pondered for a moment before looking at the elders. Obviously, the people of Scarlet Island could not resist the temptation of the Sunset Island. After a few rounds of discussion, they unanimously decided to enter the Sunset Island. Xiao Hua was only a guest elder and was only temporarily helping Hua Hang. Seeing this, he did not say anything else. Hua Hang took out the sea pearl and urged it with his spiritual power. The sea pearl suddenly shone with a red light and almost broke free from Hua Hang's control. As Hua Hang used his spiritual power, the sea pearl actually turned into a piece of seaweed and floated toward the restriction of the Sunset Island. However, when the blood-red seaweed fell on the restriction, it did not merge into the restriction as everyone expected. Instead, it fell on a stone wall and slowly slid down. Hua Hang's face was a little ugly. He covered it with his sleeve and used the heaven and earth sleeve to put it away. Then, he took out a jade slip. Obviously, he had misjudged the location. After a long while, Hua Hang hesitantly placed the sea pearl about a foot away from where it was just now. However, to everyone's astonishment, the seaweed that the sea pearl had turned into did not have any reaction. It just slid down. This. Not only was Xiao Hua puzzled, but the elders and disciples of the Scarlet Island were also puzzled. They looked at each other several times, and their eyes were full of confusion. Hua Hang was a little anxious. He scanned the area with his eyes and placed the sea pearls randomly on top of the restriction that was 10 feet away from him. He hoped that he would be able to touch the formation core that was close to him. Looking at Hua Hang, who was like a headless fly, Xiao Hua laughed involuntarily. This half-sphere was huge, probably thousands of feet wide. Hua Hang's attempt was simply like looking for a needle in a haystack. It was simply impossible. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua's heart moved. He stretched out his left hand and opened his spiritual eye. In his spiritual eye, the restriction of the entire Sunset Island was like an oval eggshell. On it, there was a thin layer of light curtain that revealed an extremely gorgeous red color. This light curtain was so round and so tight. Where could there be a formation eye for the sea pearl to be placed? This Hua Hang, what the hell is he doing? Xiao Hua waved his hand and motioned for a late Foundation establishment disciple to come over. At this time, that disciple was full of admiration for Xiao Hua. He flew over and bowed. Hua Yang greets Elder Xiao. May I know why Elder summoned me? This Xiao is not familiar with this Sunset Island. While Island Master Hua is solving the formation here, why don't you take this Xiao to look around? Xiao Hua said warmly. Hua Yang looked at the busy and even somewhat impatient Hua Hang and smiled apologetically. This disciple can't help here. If Elder Xiao has an order, this disciple dares not to disobey. Good, Xiao Hua nodded. He randomly picked a direction and flew towards the other side of the Sunset Island. Hua Yang naturally nodded to the other elders and also followed Xiao Hua. Hua Hang naturally sensed Xiao Hua's unusual movements, but he was now a little impatient. In addition, Hua Yang was by Xiao Hua's side, so he no longer paid attention to him. He even whispered to the rest of the people to disperse and search for the source of the abnormality. The Sunset Island was huge. Xiao Hua circled the entire Sunset Island like a flickering light and passing shadow. Occasionally, he even flew high up in the sky to look at the entire Sunset Island from a bird's-eye view. After the time it took to eat a meal, Xiao Hua once again stopped in midair thoughtfully. He turned his head and asked, "Hua Yang, this Xiao wants to ask you. Do you know anything about the Sunset Island? Do you know why the Sunset Island suddenly appeared from the bottom of the sea?" Elder Xiao knows. Hua Yang cupped his hands and said, "This junior has never heard of the Sunset Island. However, this junior does know that occasionally, some islands in the Guihe Sea would suddenly be submerged by the sea. The people on the islands would have no way to escape. Of course, there are also reefs and islands that suddenly appear from the bottom of the sea. However, most of them are unknown. Only when people discover them later on, will they know. Then, do you think that the position of the Sunset Island, or should I say, the position will change?" Xiao Hua stared at a place not far from him and said very thought-provoking. "Oh, that's right." Hua Yang slapped his forehead and said in realization, "When reefs and other objects sink into the sea, aren't there enormous whirlwinds and whirlpools? This Sunset Island will definitely move." Elder Zhao's words are very reasonable. Since that's the case, then Island Master Hua is still searching at the original place. Isn't it a bit too much? Xiao Hua said with a smile. Yes. Hua Yang said anxiously, "Elder Xiao, please wait a moment. This disciple will inform Island Master." After saying that, Hua Yang hurriedly flew away. Not long after, Hua Heng and the others rushed over. Hua Heng's face actually had a trace of shame. When he saw Xiao Hua, he smiled apologetically and said, "This old man has been in the Guihe Sea since young, but I didn't expect to come here." Elder Xiao, a newcomer to the Guihe Sea, actually thought of this. Xiao Hua said with a smile, "Island Master Hua is in the middle of the situation. Naturally, there are some things that you can't see clearly. Moreover, this Xiao has just encountered the sinking of the Great Flag Reef. Naturally, this Xiao has some insights." "Good," Hua Heng said with a smile, "this Hua will try it right now." Naturally, Xiao Hua couldn't stop at the formation eye that he saw. However, under everyone's speculation, Hua Heng tried again for a while and found the formation eye that Hai Zhu placed on the opposite side of the formation eye. As soon as the seaweed that Hai Zhu transformed into was placed into the formation eye, a dazzling brilliance burst out. Then, this brilliance spread out from the formation eye like ripples of water. Chapter 2169. So that's how it is. Xiao Hua nodded. No wonder Hua Heng would rather invite him as a guest elder and teach him a secret technique of the island that even he didn't know about in order to obtain Sunset Island as quickly as possible. What's next? Xiao Hua controlled the ocean pearl and asked, "Are we going directly to the island?" "Not yet." Hua Heng shook his head. "This ocean pearl only controls the outer defense of Sunset Island. I still need to use it to obtain the key to the entire forbidden technique of Sunset Island." "Oh." Xiao Hua smiled. "Then why don't you hurry up?" "Ahem," Hua Heng coughed awkwardly. "I still need Elder Zhao's help." Hua Heng transmitted a few words to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua frowned and said worriedly, "Island Master Hua, are you sure this will be fine?" "Yes," Hua Heng patted his chest. "This is the secret technique of the Sunset Island Master. I am quite confident." "All right." Xiao Hua nodded. "If anything happens, I won't take responsibility." "Ha ha ha," what can happen? Kwa Heng smiled. Even if there is a problem, you are a guest elder of Sunset Island. At worst, I will give up my position and let you be the island master. Island Master Kwa, be careful with your words. Xiao Hua waved his hand. I don't have that idea. However, Xiao Hua still muttered in his heart, damn it, I'm afraid there really is a problem. Sure enough, Xiao Hua waved his Daoist robe and the ocean pearl flew into the air. Xiao Hua opened his mouth and spat a mouthful of true essence on the ocean pearl. The ocean pearl immediately melted into a red liquid. Next to him, Kwa Heng formed a seal with both hands and hit the ocean pearl. Under Kwa Heng's control, the ocean pearl gradually turned into a whirlpool. A strange suction force came from the whirlpool and rushed towards Sunset Island. Soon, a strange wave of energy appeared on the Sunset Island. A small, long piece of stone was pulled out from the top of the towering palace as if it was being pulled out by a great force. It flew towards the ocean pearl's whirlpool. Not long after, the stone flew in front of Xiao Hua and the others. Xiao Hua hesitated and said, Island Master Kwa, or elders, you can try it first. I still want to be lazy. All right. Kwa Heng had no choice but to wave his sleeve and cast the universe within the sleeve's technique to envelop the stone piece. Unfortunately, the stone piece was not under his control and did not react at all. Elder Xiao, if this old man can't do it, I'm afraid the other elders can't either. Kwa Heng smiled bitterly. I'll have to trouble Elder Xiao. This old man trusts you. All right, Xiao Hua was helpless. He waved his hand and the heaven and earth in the sleeve was activated. The stone piece emitted a faint red color and slowly flew towards Xiao Hua. Although its movement was slow and its brilliance was extremely faint, there was still some reaction. Xiao Hua understood that his heaven and earth sleeve technique had not been completely mastered. If he could master it, it would be a completely different situation. Xiao Hua glanced at Kwa Heng and reminded him, I'm going to make a move. Elder Xiao, please. Kwa Heng was slightly hesitant, but he still nodded. Pooh. Xiao Hua bit the tip of his tongue slightly, and a wisp of blood flew out and sprayed on the stone piece. The stone piece shone brightly, and the originally red brilliance actually gave birth to a golden color. Xiao Hua did not dare to be negligent and hurriedly cast a few hand seals. The stone piece immediately restrained its brilliance and actually trembled a little. Go. Xiao Hua pointed his finger, and the stone piece flew in front of Kwa Heng. He smiled and said, Island Master Kwa, please. All right. Kwa Heng let out a long sigh of relief. He also opened his mouth and spat a mouthful of essence blood on the stone piece. Chapter 2170. Yes, there seems to be some spirit fields protected by restrictions in the back hall. There's nothing in there either. It seems that all the spirit grasses have withered. If there are a few 100-year-old spirit grasses, Island Master Kwa will be even happier. Xiao Hua continued. Hee, anyway. Kwa Heng chuckled, although it's a bit strange, Sunset Island is the foundation of my Kwa family. I can't not move here. Of course I congratulate Island Master Kwa. Xiao Hua said with a smile, however, I'm more concerned about that cultivation method. Don't worry, Elder Xiao. Kwa Heng raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, the restriction around that cultivation method is intact. I've already sensed it. When we reach the main hall, I'll take Elder Xiao there. Great. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and said, Thank you, Island Master Kwa. No need to thank me. The entire Sunset Island was given to me by Elder Xiao. I'm the one who should thank you. Hua Heng pulled Xiao Hua's robe and flew into the main hall. Standing at the entrance of the main hall, which was much taller than him, Xiao Hua felt like he was an ant. It wasn't just an impression, it was a kind of aura, a kind of majesty that came from the main hall. Looking at the 3 words, Sunset Palace, that were similar to the inscriptions on the main hall, Xiao Hua became thoughtful. These words were similar to the ones he saw in the Zhong family of Yun City. In the ancient times, could it be, there were other words besides the green seal script, the inscriptions on the armor, and the golden seal script? Xiao Hua was a bit confused. Otherwise, where did the current cultivation words come from? Elder Xiao, do you recognize these 3 words? Hua Heng glanced at Xiao Hua's eyes and said with a smile. Xiao Hua's heart moved and he said, of course I don't. However, besides Sunset Island, what else could it be? Ha ha ha, Hua Heng shook his head and said, these 3 words are Sunset Palace. Elder Xiao, you're wrong. Then he sighed and said, it's a pity that the jade slip that recorded these words wasn't left behind on Blood Ray Island. After I move into Sunset Island, I'll search carefully. There must be a jade slip left behind on the island. Okay, Xiao Hua saw that Hua Heng didn't hide it and felt very gratified. He followed Hua Heng into the main hall. Everything in the main hall was huge. There were huge pillars, huge stone chairs, and huge tables. It was several times bigger than the main hall of the Misty Cloud sect. However, there were 3 skeletons on the ground. Only one of them belonged to a cultivator. The other 2 clearly didn't belong to cultivators. The 2 skeletons were 10 times bigger than Hua Heng, and each skeleton had 4 legs, each of which was as long as Hua Heng's legs. There was even a corpse with a tail that was longer than its body. If it weren't for the skeleton of that cultivator, Xiao Hua could still regard the other 2 as body cultivators like Hua Heng. However, compared with the skeleton of a cultivator, the difference was obvious. Demonic beast. Xiao Hua naturally saw it long ago, and he thought so at first. However, there was a storage pouch beside the cultivator's skeleton, and there were also 2 storage pouches beside the other 2 skeletons. It was just that these 2 storage pouches were somewhat different from the cultivator's storage pouch. This old man will take a look first. Hua Heng glanced at Xiao Hua and waved his hand. The cultivator's storage pouch flew into his hand. Ha! When Hua Heng scanned it with his divine sense, he couldn't help but be stunned. What's wrong? Xiao Hua asked curiously. Hee, Elder Xiao, take a look for yourself. Hua Heng waved his hand and threw the storage pouch to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua took it and scanned it with his divine sense. He immediately understood. The storage pouch was a blur. The arrays inside had long been destroyed. There was nothing left behind, and he couldn't see anything from inside. While Xiao Hua was looking at the storage pouch, Hua Heng took the other 2 storage pouches and scanned them with his divine sense. He then threw them on the ground. Obviously, the arrays inside were damaged. Huh, what's this? Hua Heng's gaze fell on the white bone with the tail. He saw a dark ring on the white bone of the forelimb. It was about 4 fingers wide and seemed to be an armband. Hua Heng reached out and wanted to pick up the armband. However, just as he touched the armband touched the white bone. This simple touch shook the white bone into powder. What shocked Hua Heng even more was that the remaining white bone also turned into powder with the vibration. Oh, what's going on? Xiao Hua naturally saw this abnormality and couldn't help but be surprised. Obviously, this white bone seemed to have gone through millions or tens of millions of years. How could it become so fragile? Could it be? Xiao Hua guessed. The ancestors of the Sunset Island have all turned into white powder. Ha! This is strange. Kwa Heng picked up the armband and scanned it with his divine sense. Two things appeared in his hands. Xiao Hua's gaze swept over them, and a strange expression appeared on his face. Because in Kwa Heng's hands, one was a token and the other was a relic. On the token was a ferocious snake's head, and the relic was the size of a fist. Elder Xiao. Kwa Heng looked at the token in his hand and said with a smile, "This seems to be what you want, right?" This is very strange. Xiao Hua touched his nose and said with a bitter smile, "This Xiao can swear that this Xiao is really just curious." "Ha ha ha, Elder Xiao, look at you, how can this old man not believe you?" Kwa Heng didn't doubt him at all and threw the token in his hand to Xiao Hua. "Thank you, Island Master." Xiao Hua took it and looked at the brand new token. It didn't have the slightest rust and he couldn't see any clues. He waved his hand and put it into the space. "This thing seems to be a storage item. Unfortunately, the array inside has also collapsed. Just now, this old man only had time to take out these two things." Kwa Heng didn't regard himself as an outsider and showed the armband and the relic to Xiao Hua again. Xiao Hua followed his words and looked inside. Sure enough, the inside was also a piece of chaos, there was nothing inside. He looked at the fist-sized relic. It was crystal clear and there was a layer of milky white brilliance inside. It seemed to be a cross-legged Buddha statue. "Island Master Kwa, if this thing is useless to you, this Xiao?" Xiao Hua asked tentatively. "Elder Xiao, you can take it." Kwa Heng waved his hand and said, "This thing doesn't belong to my Sunset Island. This Kwa is also not interested. If you want it, you can take it. However, if you find something related to my Sunset Island, please tell this old man." "Haha, of course." Xiao Hua smiled as he placed the armband into his bosom. He also placed the saraira into his space and took the 3 storage pouches. "These 2 skeletons. I'm afraid they can't move at all." Kwa Heng squatted down and looked at the skeletons and whispered to Xiao Hua. This Xiao also thinks so." Xiao Hua nodded. "Huff." Kwa Heng raised his mouth and blew a breath of air. Hua, as the wind blew, the 2 skeletons collapsed and turned into 2 pieces of white powder. Alas, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Kwa Heng waved his Taoist robe. As the breeze blew, 3 piles of white powder rose up and soon drifted in the air, leaving no trace behind. Ouch! Xiao Hua's eyes narrowed as if he thought of something. However, before he could think carefully, another wave of serious palpitations suddenly came. Could it be that this warning sign didn't appear on Sunset Island? Xiao Hua was shocked. It seems that there is still an unknown danger. Island Master Kwa. Xiao Hua said somewhat anxiously, this Xiao suddenly thought of something and is in a hurry to leave. What is the cultivation method that Island Master Kwa is talking about? Where is it on Sunset Island? This Xiao wants to take a look first. If there is no fate, this Xiao will take a look and leave. There is no need to be in such a hurry, right? Kwa Heng said curiously, Sunset Island has just appeared. There will be an island establishment ceremony in 3 months. Fellow Taoist Xiao is a guest of Sunset Island and should attend. Xiao Hua shook his head. It's not that this Xiao doesn't want to stay. This is no small matter. This Xiao can't wait. All right. Kwa Heng clapped his hand and took the stone tablet in his hand. After he immersed his divine sense in it, he pointed his finger. A trace of blood flashed on the stone tablet. It was a rumbling sound coming from the inner hall in the distance. Kwa Heng's face lit up and he said with a smile, this old master is fortunate to have not failed you. This is one of the forbidden areas of Sunset Island. Those who are not elders or above are not allowed to enter. Since fellow Daoist Xiao is a guest elder, you can naturally enter. Please. All right. Xiao Hua knew that this was not the time to be polite, so he nodded and followed Kua Hang into the inner hall. Could it be that this Kua Hang has bad intentions towards this young master? Xiao Hua was somewhat suspicious as he flew. However, the problem was that this stone tablet had gone through Xiao Hua's blood, so there was a trace of gold left in it. This trace of gold was enough for Xiao Hua to control the stone tablet when Kua Hang controlled it to attack Xiao Hua. In other words, Kua Hang couldn't threaten Xiao Hua. What kind of warning sign is that? Xiao Hua was suddenly shocked. Could it be that Sunset Island will sink again? However, looking at Kua Hang's excited appearance, even if he told Kua Hang that Sunset Island would sink again, Kua Hang definitely wouldn't believe him. Elder Xiao, it's right here. After flying past a few restrictions and a few corridors that looked like a maze, Kua Hang pointed at a small house that was only 3 meters tall and said, "Inside the small house is the most important place where the cultivation methods of my Sunset Island are recorded." However, at this point, Kua Hang was somewhat hesitant. Are there any taboos? Xiao Hua asked with a frown. If this old master says it now, Elder Xiao, I'm afraid that this old master will think that this old master is deceiving Elder. Kua Hang smiled bitterly. It's probably because this old master didn't say it clearly earlier. It doesn't matter. Island Master Kua, please say it. Xiao Hua smiled. Kua Hang said embarrassedly, earlier Elder Xiao asked what cultivation method it was. Actually, this old master also doesn't know, because this forbidden area has some strange rules. This Xiao is even more curious. Xiao Hua's curiosity was piqued. Yes, every Sunset Island disciple above the rank of elder can enter this forbidden area to comprehend the bone tempering technique after mastering it. Kua Hang thought for a moment and said very seriously, however, this opportunity only comes once, and it's only for a day. No matter if you comprehend it or not, you have to come out after a day and a half. After you come out, no matter how much you comprehend, you can't teach it to other disciples, and you can't tell others what you've comprehended. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Calm to vote for it. Chapter 2171. Oh my! Xiao Hua almost stuck out his tongue. This rule is too strange. Aren't the seniors of the Sunset Island afraid that this cultivation method will be lost? I don't know either. Kua Hang shook his head. I haven't completed the bone tempering technique yet, so I didn't think about it before. Now, I have to consider when I can enter after completing the bone tempering technique so that I won't waste this one day and one night opportunity. All right. Xiao Hua muttered, I don't know when I can come to the Gue he see in the future, so I'll go in and take a look first. Elder Xiao, actually, your body refining technique has already surpassed this old man's. If you continue to comprehend the bone tempering technique of my Sunset Island, you will have a chance to comprehend this secret technique in the future. Why are you in such a hurry? Kua Hang was sincerely thinking for Xiao Hua. Don't, Xiao Hua thought. If my premonition is correct, the Sunset Island may sink again in the next few days. I'd better hurry and take a look first. I'm very curious. If I know about this, I'll definitely go in and take a look. Otherwise, I wouldn't have collected those tokens of unknown origin. Xiao Hua said while touching his nose. All right. Kua Hang pointed his finger at the stone tablet. With a rumbling sound, a stone door rose from the inside of the small house. Elder Xiao, go in. After 1 day and 1 night, the stone door will naturally open. Elder Xiao, you have to come out immediately. Otherwise, I won't be able to open the stone door unless there's no life in the small house. I know. Xiaohua nodded and was about to walk through the stone door when he turned around and said, Island Master, the Sunset Island has just risen from the sea. Who knows if it will sink again? Island Master should be prepared. Hee, don't worry, Elder Xiao. Hua Hang smiled mysteriously. How can I not know? If there's any movement, the island guarding spirit stone will definitely inform me. Of course. Xiaohua patted his forehead and said with a smile, I don't control this spirit stone, so I don't know its magical uses. Then, Xiaohua walked into the small house with a big smile. Hua Hang saw Xiaohua's figure disappear and the big rock fell down. He didn't waste any more time and turned around to fly away. The Sunset Island had just appeared. He had too many things to arrange. Xiaohua's matter was really insignificant. When Xiaohua entered the hut, his divine sense was immediately confined, unable to leave his body at all. His gaze swept across the 4 walls inside, but he didn't find anything special. He only felt that there seemed to be a strange magic power fluctuation inside the walls, which should be a kind of strange restriction. Xiaohua's eyes swept across the room, and when he saw that the 4 walls were filled with these words, he unconsciously relaxed his brows. Because the handwriting was the same as the Sunset Palace, engraved outside the main hall. It was similar to the inscriptions on the armor, and it was also a type that Xiaohua was familiar with. Great! Xiaohua couldn't help but rejoice at what he had done in Zhongling Mountain Villa. If he didn't care about Zhong Tianyao life and death that day and only took the 2 pieces of gold foil away, not only would he not get refining the world, he wouldn't get the 5 elements refining technique, and it would be even more impossible for him to know the words similar to the inscription of armor. Then, when he came here, he could only waste 1 day and 1 night in vain. Giving spiritual herbs to others, leaving a lingering fragrance in my hands. Xiaohua sighed. Old friends really don't deceive me. However, Xiaohua's sigh hadn't finished yet. His gaze swept across a wall, where the starting point of the cultivation method was. He unconsciously stood on the spot, his mouth still muttering, what? Celestial body empowerment technique? How is there such a cultivation method? However, this still wasn't what shocked Xiaohua the most. By the time he finished reciting the general outline, his 2 eyes were shining. A kind of fervor, a kind of absolute disbelief, was revealed on his face, which was practically unperturbed by favor or disgrace. Is there really such a miraculous arcane effort? But pouring all kinds of spiritual energy into the body, and forcibly raising the magic power. Not afraid of any bottleneck, not afraid of any chi deviation. No wonder the bone tempering technique is only the foundation. Without the bone tempering technique as the foundation, the body would have collapsed long ago. No wonder this secret technique can't be spread outside. If half a word was leaked out, wouldn't it have set off a reign of terror in the Dawn Rain continent long ago? And, the simplest thing is, this Sunset Island would have been the one to suffer the most. Right, why didn't Hua Heng make me swear a hard oath? Could it be that he knows I won't spread it? Or maybe, he doesn't think I can understand it. Xiaohua pondered again, forget it, who cares, hurry up and comprehend it. There's only 1 day and 1 night, time is tight. Thinking, Xiaohua sat cross-legged, hurriedly reading from the first sentence of the Celestial Body Empowerment Technique. Soon, 1 day and 1 night passed. When the huge stone of the hut rose, Xiaohua's figure walked out of the hut with joy in his eyes, seemingly with a kind of doubt. Elder Xiao, please follow this old man's guidance. Kua Heng's voice sounded in Xiao Hua's ear. This old man is in the main hall right now, and has no time to come and pick up Elder. Well said. Xiao Hua understood that this was done by Kua Heng using the island guarding spirit stone. He turned his head to look at the hut that was closed again, and followed Kua Heng's guidance to the main hall. At this time, the main hall was already in order. Several elders and dozens of disciples were sitting in an orderly manner. Kua Heng sat at the head, while Xue Xue and Kua Chiao sat at the side. When Xue Xue saw Xiao Hua appear, a smile appeared on her face. Obviously, she had been worried for one day and one night. Elder Xiao, did you get anything? Kua Heng smiled. Ha ha ha. Island Master is testing me. Xiao Hua smiled but didn't answer. Ha ha ha, yes. Kua Heng nodded. Presumably, Elder Xiao is also wondering why I didn't make you swear a hard oath, right? Yes, that's right. Xiao Hua smiled. Elder Xiao, you don't know, this is a kind of charm of my Kua family. Kua Heng smiled. As long as you enter that hut, you will be restricted by the charm, and there is no need for any hard oath. Ah. I see. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. He didn't blame Kua Heng for not telling him that day. He knew that even if he knew the reason, he would still have to enter. As for the charm, was Xiao Hua afraid? That day, the charm of the disciples of Sunset Island was probably not too important. As for Xiao Hua's doubts, it was a warning sign. Even now, he still hadn't found any clues. Elder Xiao, please sit. Kua Heng waved his hand. This old man still has some things to discuss with the elders. When Xiao Hua heard this, he immediately cupped his hands. Island Master Kua, I already told you yesterday that I really have something that I can't avoid. Okay. Kua Heng seemed to have known that Xiao Hua would say this. He clapped his hand and took out a token, flying in front of Xiao Hua. This is my Sunset Island's token. Elder Xiao, please keep it well. Okay, this is no problem. If Sunset Island has any problems in the future, please inform me. Xiao Hua took the token and said bluntly. Chapter 2172. Great. Kua Heng was overjoyed when he saw that Xiao Hua didn't decline and even said such words. He opened another storage pouch and handed it over with a smile. This is the harvest of my Sunset Island disciples yesterday. Elder Xiao, you don't have to be polite. Good. Xiao Hua took it and cupped his hands. I don't dare to stay any longer. Island Master Kua, elders, I'm really sorry. Xiao Hua raised his eyes to signal Xue Xue. Xue Xue immediately got up and followed Xiao Hua out of the hall. Kua Heng was quite surprised to see Xiao Hua so anxious. He naturally thought of the secret technique in the small house on Sunset Island. Unfortunately, because of the power of the talisman, Kua Heng didn't dare to ask more. He also knew that Xiao Hua would absolutely not say. Therefore, Kua Heng was somewhat hesitant. Yes, now that Kua Heng had the island guarding spirit stone, the entire Sunset Island's forbidden technique was under his control. This day and night, Xiao Hua did his best to comprehend the immortal body bestowment technique and didn't have time to be distracted. Kua Heng also didn't idle. Kua Heng didn't pay attention to the relocation of the Scarlet Island disciples. Instead, he put all his attention on refining the island guarding spirit stone. Yesterday's spell was just a simple control of the island guarding spirit stone with the help of Xiao Hua's heaven and earth sleeve. As for the real control, it would be as natural as the palm of one's hand. After all, Kua Heng was only a gold core cultivator. Should I do something? Kua Heng's heart inevitably wavered. After all, Xiaohua was a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. Kua Heng was really worried. However, just as Kua Heng's fingers moved slightly, as if he was going to touch his storage pouch, Xiaohua suddenly turned around and said with a smile, "Island Master Kua, is there anything else you haven't told me?" Kua Heng was startled, and sweat appeared on his back. He waved his hand and said, "No, this old man thought that you left in such a hurry and felt really apologetic. I wanted to see if there was anything in the storage pouch." "Ha ha ha, Island Master Kua, no need to be polite. This Xiao is already a guest of Sunset Island. I'll have plenty of opportunities to come again in the future." Xiaohua, who released his Buddhist consciousness, laughed loudly. His eyes flashed a trace of seriousness, and he quickly walked out. Forget it. Kua Heng didn't think that Xiaohua could see through his actions or intentions. "I'm afraid this is God's will. This old man will believe in Xiaohua." Immediately, Kua Heng, along with several elders and a dozen disciples, followed Xiaohua out of the main hall. Seeing that Sunset Island was busy, the disciples slowly moved all their belongings to Sunset Island. Xiaohua was nervous and didn't dare to stay for a long time. He casually said a few polite words to Kua Heng and the others, then took Shueshue's hand and flew towards the Dawn Rain continent. The two of them flew for an hour in one breath. Only when they saw an uninhabited island in front of them did Xiaohua slowly descend. He felt that the throbbing in his heart had somewhat calmed down. "Husband, why are you in such a hurry?" Shueshue asked curiously. "Are you rushing back to the Imperial Thunder sect?" He. Xiaohua sensed again and found that the warning sign had disappeared. He immediately said with a mischievous smile, "Wife, there are many people on Sunset Island." Bah! Shueshue's divine sense swept over and found that there were no traces of people nearby. Her face slightly reddened and her body gradually heated up. She reached out and pinched Xiaohua's arm, saying angrily, "You impatient little husband." Just as Xiaohua was about to move, a cold feeling suddenly emerged from his back. It was as if he was being stared at by a poisonous snake. An incomparable sense of danger caused his heart to swell and burst. That restless feeling immediately disappeared like a gust of wind. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. His figure flashed and he immediately flew away with Shueshue, flying straight towards the depths of QC. Husband, what are you doing?" Shueshue looked at Xiaohua's deathly pale face and the surrounding scenery that was rapidly retreating. Xiaohua actually used the bright thunder escape to escape at the fastest speed. Ah! Shueshue was instantly shocked. Like Xiaohua, the beautiful thoughts in her heart instantly disappeared. Feeling Shueshue's body stiffen, Xiaohua knew that Shueshue already understood the situation. He used all his magic power and didn't even have time to speak. "Husband," Shueshue whispered, "did you encounter an enemy?" How could Xiaohua speak? Right now, his back was covered in goosebumps. He felt as if there was a snake chasing after him. And yet, even when he released his divine sense, he still couldn't find any clues. In fact, that feeling was getting more and more serious, as if this threat was getting closer and closer. After another half cup of tea's time, Xiaohua suddenly stopped in the air and let go of Shueshue. He said anxiously, "Wife, husband can't talk to you anymore. There seems to be a fatal threat approaching. Husband will do his best to escape. You have to know that husband's senses have always been very sharp. Husband can't bring you into this whirlpool." As he spoke, Xiaohua clapped his hand, took out the token of Sunset Island, and handed it to Shueshue. "Take this token of Sunset Island back, and ask Kua Heng to send disciples to escort you back to the thunder-controlling sect. Even if they can't go, they have to send you to Haoming City or Yun City. In short, ask Yu Chen or Zhong Tianyao to send disciples to escort you back to the thunder-controlling sect. Tell them that husband has some urgent matters to attend to. When husband is done, I will definitely thank them. Then, he didn't dare to say another word. He raised his head to identify the direction and flew towards the north of Qi. Okay. Shui accepted the token from the Sunset Island. Her tears had already fallen. She knew that her cultivation was too shallow. She couldn't help Xiaohua at all. Instead, she had become a burden to Xiaohua. Xiaohua had abandoned her and traveled alone. It seemed very heartless, but in fact, it was the greatest protection for her. Shui fiercely bit her pearly white teeth and a trace of blood was left on them. But then, Shui seemed to wake up and said loudly, "Husband, don't be afraid. This time you will definitely." However, Xiaohua's bright thunder escape was so fast. In just a moment, it was about to disappear. There was only a vague figure in the distance. How could Xiaohua hear it? How did Shui know that Xiaohua would definitely be fine this time? It's really strange. Shui identified the direction and was about to fly in the direction of Sunset Island. However, her heart stirred and she put away the token. She remained calm and unruffled in the midst of chaos. She lightly floated up and flew in the direction Xiaohua had come from. While flying, Shui greedily looked at the sea. Occasionally, she would descend and seem to check the sea beasts in the sea. In less than the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, a powerful divine sense suddenly swept over from afar and swept over the entire range of 100 miles. That divine sense was so powerful that Shui couldn't determine the cultivation of the person who came. However, Shui immediately locked onto that person. After a moment, a figure turned into a rainbow and flew over from afar. Ah! A nascent soul cultivator. Shui slightly sensed and immediately felt as if her scalp was about to explode. She hastily bowed and stood in midair. She didn't dare to raise her head and respectfully welcome the person. She really couldn't think of when Xiaohua provoked a nascent soul cultivator and was actually being hunted down. This person was naturally Changbai sect's Daoist Jingru. Daoist Jingru only paused for a moment. Her gaze swept over Shui and she immediately moved away. Her figure didn't stay any longer and turned into a rainbow, flying in the direction Xiaohua flew towards. Shui waited until Daoist Jingru flew far away before she finally relaxed. Her heart was beating wildly and she was somewhat apprehensive. She was also very bold. Fortunately, Daoist Jingru didn't know that there was a female cultivator beside Xiaohua. Otherwise, Shui might really be in danger. Of course, since Shui dared to test Daoist Jingru like this, she probably had something in her heart to rely on. Not to mention Shui returning to Sunset Island, Xiaohua had been flying all the way. In his heart, he had already cursed Daoist Jingru to the heavens. If cursing could be used as a magic technique, Daoist Jingru would have long been riddled with holes by Xiaohua's curses. Which family's child is this? Why is he so insensible? He didn't even say hello and just chased after me. In the end, Xiaohua really didn't have the heart to curse. He very helplessly thought to himself as he flew away with all his might. Ha! Where is this guy? Is there something wrong with this tracking technique of mine? While Xiaohua was bewildered, Daoist Jingru was also puzzled. They had already chased him to the depths of the Kuehe Sea, so why hadn't they found any traces of Xiaohua? Moreover, according to Daoist Jingru's sea chart, Xiaohua seemed to be heading towards the northwest of the Kuehe Sea. Oh my, could it be that this guy actually knows that this old man is chasing after him? Could it be, this guy's flying technique is very fast? Daoist Jing Root suddenly came to a realization. Chapter 2173. Previously, although Daoist Jing Root chased Xiaohua to the Kuwei he see using a secret technique, he didn't put Xiaohua in his eyes. Moreover, Xiaohua's position didn't change at all. Therefore, Daoist Jing Root chased after him slowly and didn't use much magic power. Now, Daoist Jing Root discovered that Xiaohua's position suddenly changed and seemed to be far away from him. That flying speed was absolutely terrifying for a Foundation establishment cultivator. He couldn't help but reconsider the problem of how to kill Xiaohua. I absolutely can't let Xiaohua go ashore. Daoist Jing Root narrowed his eyes. The magic power in his body suddenly surged and he struck out with a spell. A faint red shadow appeared in front of him and he sped up again. Daoist Jing Root's flying speed increased again and unexpectedly intercepted Xiaohua horizontally. Why does it feel so intense? Xiaohua was alarmed. His magic power had already been pushed to the limit. The true essence in his body wasn't little consumed during this period of time. The true essence generated by the mental cultivation method was gradually unable to keep up with the consumption of the bright thunder escape. What should I do? Xiaohua also released his Buddhist sense. Unfortunately, although his Buddhist sense had a much larger range than his divine sense, it still couldn't discover Daoist Jing Root. Moreover, in his Buddhist sense, all he could see was the boundless sea. There was no land at all. Xiaohua could only rely on the lightning escape technique to escape. Earth escape, wood escape, and fire escape were all useless. If only there was a water escape technique. Xiaohua was somewhat rueful. Just as he was thinking, his Buddhist sense suddenly encountered an extremely powerful divine sense. Nascent soul cultivator. In an instant, Xiaohua determined the cultivation level of the newcomer. When did I offend a nascent soul cultivator? Xiaohua's face was pale. At this moment, Daoist Jing Root's divine sense seemed to have sensed something and immediately probed towards his Buddhist sense like a tentacle. How could Xiaohua dare to let his Buddhist sense stay? He immediately withdrew his hand and formed a water-dispelling technique, plunging into the Kuwei Sea. However, in merely a moment, Xiaohua came out of the Kuwei Sea again and cursed inwardly, "Damn it, this young master's brain is dizzy from being chased by that damned nascent soul cultivator. This young master's flying speed in the Kuwei Sea can't compare to flying in the air. I actually want to escape in the Kuwei Sea, won't be caught by that bastard soon." Immediately after, Xiaohua flicked his hand and took out a bright flower pill. He consumed it without the slightest hesitation and did his best to activate his mental cultivation technique to refine it. He once again increased the speed of the bright thunder evasion. Xiaohua's divine senses once again, SSS once again, his sense. He was a lot closer to him. Not SSS, S's. TSSS, T's. His, S half test. SSSS, SSS, S cheese, SST ons his TS2s to he 2s. 8SS to T, S, S, the rich spiritual chi of heaven and earth quickly evaporated. Right at this moment, Xiaohua's heart was moved again. Sunset Island's imbuement technique was precisely to directly inject endless heaven and earth spirit chi into the body, borrowing the valiant body to convert the heaven and earth spirit chi into true chi, and then inject it into the meridians. The efficiency of this conversion was related to the cultivator's fleshly body. If one's physical body was strong enough, they would naturally be able to convert more heaven and earth spiritual chi. Otherwise, if too much heaven and earth spiritual chi entered one's body, one's physical body could even explode. The disciples of the Sunset Island had to practice the bone tempering technique first. They could only practice the body imbuing technique after their bodies were fully developed. And Xiao Hua is not as good as Kuo Heng. He has long practiced the bone tempering technique, and his bones have already been refined to one color. At this time, using the immortal baptism technique is just right for him to bring out the best in each other. As soon as Xiao Hua used the body imbuing technique, the earth spirit chi of heaven and earth that was wrapped in the innermost layer of his body immediately entered his fleshly body. Under the urging of Xiao Hua's cultivation method, strands of spiritual chi were refined and poured into his meridians. Although Xiao Hua was a beginner, the amount of spiritual chi he could refine at the beginning wasn't much, and the amount of true essence he could increase was even less. But now that he was being chased to the point of urgency, this strand of true essence could be urged to fly. At a critical moment, this strand of true essence could be used to save his life. After another hour, Daoist Jing Ru caught up a bit closer. Xiao Hua could almost use his Buddhist sense to perceive that Daoist Jing Ru's divine sense was already only a few dozen feet away from him. This won't do, I can't keep flying like this. This guy seems to know that this young master wants to fly towards the Dawn Rain continent. Xiao Hua made a prompt decision, turning his head and flying towards the interior of the Guihe Sea. Xiao Hua's move actually caught Daoist Jing Ru somewhat unprepared. Although he had some secret techniques, he couldn't always check. By the time he checked again, Xiao Hua had already flown extremely far away. How did this guy know that this old man was chasing after him? Xiao Hua's change of direction made Daoist Jing Ru even more aware. However, he also became even more confused. If he's a nascent soul cultivator, this old man would still suspect that he has some magical ability. Chapter 2174. This nascent soul cultivator might be related to the great expert who sealed this young master's middle Dantian and Naiwan palace. What about the other nascent soul cultivators? Xiao Hua speculated inwardly, but his figure was dissatisfied. He hastily turned around and flew towards Guihe Sea again. Xiao Hua's wild guess was naturally wrong, but Daoist Jing Ru missed. When he estimated the difference, he suddenly released his divine sense and cast it like a net in the sea, wanting to lock onto Xiao Hua with his divine sense. Contrary to Daoist Jing Ru's expectations, he missed again. Daoist Jing Ru was really ashamed and angry, so he had no choice but to use his secret technique again. When Daoist Jing Ru saw it clearly, he almost vomited blood. The cunning Xiao Hua actually flew towards the depths of Guihe Sea again. Based on Xiao Hua's previous speed, Daoist Jing Ru was actually quite far away from him. This old man is going to waste time with you. Daoist Jing Ru laughed from extreme anger. The spiritual energy in Guihe Sea is thinner the deeper you go. This old man has a nascent soul, but what do you have? I'm afraid that before you reach the depths of Guihe Sea, the medicinal pills in your storage bag will be used up. This old man doesn't believe that even if this old man chases you slowly from behind, I won't be able to catch up. I won't be able to capture you. This old man will definitely use a secret technique to torture you 1,000 times. This old man wants to see what the origin of your Imperial Thunder School's lightning evasion technique is. Guihe Sea was vast and boundless, so it naturally stretched as far as the eye could see. However, Xiao Hua was, after all, over 100 li away from Daoist Jing Ru. Moreover, Xiao Hua deliberately lowered his altitude and flew close to the sea surface. Daoist Jing Ru really couldn't see Xiao Hua with his naked eyes or other magical abilities. Of course, Daoist Jing Ru was a nascent soul cultivator, so he naturally had magical abilities and magic techniques that Xiao Hua didn't know about. Unfortunately, Daoist Jing-Ru couldn't even see Xiao Hua's face and couldn't catch up. All his magic techniques were also empty talk. This was also one of the reasons for Daoist Jing-Ru's shame and anger. Because Daoist Jing-Ru had to rely on a secret technique to determine Xiao Hua's position, he couldn't use all his magic power on a flying technique. Moreover, Daoist Jing-Ru wasn't good at flying techniques, and this rainbow flying technique consumed a lot of magic power. So much so that he didn't bring his flying magic tool with him. All of these coincidences created an awkward situation for Daoist Jing-Si when she was chasing after Xiao Hua. Right now, Daoist calm consideration's only hope is that Xiao Hua's magic power is exhausted. Without spirit pills to replenish his true essence, his speed will drop. Or perhaps Daoist Jing-Ru's divine sense could lock onto Xiao Hua. Daoist Jing-Ru wouldn't need to use a secret technique and could pursue Xiao Hua with all his might. However, dozens of days quickly passed, and the distance between the two of them didn't change at all. Xiao Hua was still recklessly rushing around like a headless fly. Daoist Jing-Si also frequently used secret techniques to intercept Xiao Hua from behind. Although there were mountain-like tsunamis, although there were lightning flashes and thunder rolls in the dark night, although sea beasts occasionally emerged from time to time, and even experienced cultivators encountered them, Xiao Hua's magic power wasn't as exhausted as Daoist Master Jing-Si thought. Moreover, Xiao Hua's cultivation had actually increased extremely quickly due to Daoist Jing-Ru's constant pressure. It was much faster than his usual cultivation speed. Motherfucker, this is my fate. Xiao Hua used the lightning evasion, and his flowing cloud movement technique also steadily improved. His flying speed was clearly faster than before. He couldn't help but secretly grumble, that year, under the pursuit of 4 Foundation establishment cultivators, I suddenly rushed to the 10th level of Qi refining. Today, I'm being chased by a nascent soul cultivator. This guy is even more powerful than those 4. Since he's following orders, even if he doesn't kill me as soon as he sees me, he'll completely imprison me. If I see the almighty person who sealed me, do you think I'll still be alive? I reckon that under this guy's pursuit, I'll rush to the gold core stage. Daoist Jing-Ru was even more astonished than Xiao Hua. This wasn't a few days, nor was it a dozen days. It had already been more than a month, but Xiao Hua's speed didn't show any signs of slowing down. This guy, where did he get so many spirit pills? Spirit pills. Although your Imperial Thunder sect has a lot of spirit pills, I want to see how a Foundation establishment cultivator can completely refine the medicinal power after taking so many spirit pills all at once. Even if they're all used for flight, won't the medicinal power accumulated in the meridians leave behind future troubles? Even if I can't catch up to you, do you think you can still continue to advance? Won't your cultivation be damaged? Another dozen days passed, and Daoist Jing-Ru was still the same as before. He withdrew his secret technique and chased after Xiao Hua in the direction he estimated. At this time, Xiao Hua had just turned around and wanted to fly in the direction of the Dawn Rain continent. Because there were no warning signs in advance, Xiao Hua didn't pay too much attention to it. He had just retracted his Buddhist sense and thought that Daoist Jing-Ru was still chasing after him. However, after the time it took to eat a meal, the familiar divine sense that his Buddhist sense had already come into contact with swept over like a waterfall unlocked onto Xiao Hua all of a sudden. Ah! Xiao Hua was greatly alarmed. He released his Buddhist sense and suddenly discovered that Daoist Jing-Ru was only a dozen li away from him and was at the edge of his Buddhist sense. Looking at this young nascent soul cultivator and the sinister smile on his face, Xiao Hua's soul flew out of his body and his heart jumped for no reason. He clapped his hands and sent a handful of bright flower pills into the air. Then, he immediately urged the dragon transformation secret art, the celestial body filling technique, and the Heart Sutra to refine the earth essential milk. Under these several methods, Xiaohua's flying speed suddenly increased greatly. What kind of flying technique is this? Daoist Jing Ru's divine sense finally saw Xiaohua. He saw that Xiaohua's body was wrapped in a layer of earthy yellow spiritual energy. Moreover, there were many faint whirlpools appearing on the surface of his body, stirring up the surrounding spiritual energy and pouring it into his body. Daoist Jing Ru was quite astonished, especially when he saw that Xiaohua's flying technique was actually comparable to that of a nascent soul cultivator. After all, he had previously used a secret technique and couldn't urge the flying technique to its limit. But now, he had almost pushed the flying technique to its limit. Of course, if he had used the secret technique before, Daoist Jing Ru would still be somewhat worried. After all, the distance between the two was more than 100 li and his divine sense hadn't locked onto Xiaohua. But now, it was different. Daoist Jing Ru didn't need to consume magic power to support the secret technique and his divine sense had locked onto Xiaohua. Daoist Jing Ru's heart had long since returned to his stomach. If he could still let Xiaohua escape under these circumstances, then he, Daoist Jing Ru, would truly have no face to hang around in the cultivation world of the Dawn Rain continent. After another half a day, Daoist Jing Ru felt that he seemed to be a bit too optimistic. The distance between him and Xiaohua was now about 70 li, which was within the range of his divine sense. However, in this half a day, although this distance had somewhat decreased, the decrease was really limited. Moreover, Xiaohua's current direction was already rushing towards the Dawn Rain continent because of the turn just now. Rise, Daoist Jing Ru's flying speed slowed down slightly and his hands formed a seal. A trace of redness appeared on Daoist Jing Ru's face, and a dark green sword-shaped magic weapon emerged from the top of his head. It slightly flashed in the air and unexpectedly disappeared into the void. Since you've been locked onto by this old man's divine sense, doesn't this old man have countless methods to deal with you? Daoist Jing Ru's face revealed a sinister smile. Xiaohua naturally didn't dare to withdraw his Buddhist sense. Although it wasn't completely unfolded, it still extended to the left. Suddenly, a wave of ripples abruptly flashed in the space around 3 m behind Xiaohua, and then the jade-green magic treasure actually appeared out of thin air and pierced directly towards Xiaohua's back. What kind of method is this? Xiaohua was greatly alarmed. He already had nowhere to hide, but at this dangerous moment, Xiaohua relied on the ethereal steps to dodge the attack. That flying sword precisely hit Xiaohua's shoulder blade. Peng, like the sound of metal striking stone, Xiaohua's figure admittedly staggered a little, but his flying speed unexpectedly didn't slow down at all. In fact, he even flew a bit more because of this. What made Xiaohua feel most at ease and what made Daoist Jing Ru's eyes pop out the most was that Xiaohua actually didn't suffer the slightest injury. Celestial infusion technique. It's really a divine technique, an ancient technique. Xiaohua almost wanted to laugh out loud. During this month, he didn't stop cultivating the celestial infusion technique at all. This technique not only transformed the world's spiritual energy into true qi, but also gradually strengthened Xiaohua's physical body. Daoist Jing Ru's hasty attack actually didn't injure Xiaohua in the slightest. With this delay, Daoist Jing Ru once again pulled away from Xiaohua. Looking at Xiaohua's lively appearance, Daoist Jing Ru didn't know what to say. His flying technique was so outstanding, and his physical body was also so valiant. This kind of cultivator, if his magic power was similar to those of the same stage, then he would be a near-invincible existence. If he was allowed to cultivate to nascent soul, then perhaps the order of catching up to him would completely change. So much so that he simply wouldn't have the opportunity to escape. Thinking of this, Daoist Jingru's eyes slightly narrowed, and his desire to kill Xiaohua became even more resolute. Quick! Daoist Jingru threw a scarlet medicinal pill into his mouth. His entire physical body suddenly swelled up, and his flying figure naturally slowed down a little. Soon after, Daoist Jingru made a hand seal, and his index and middle fingers condensed together, just like a sword technique. The sword-type magic weapon that had just struck Xiaohua, under the control of Daoist Jingru, suddenly flew up, quickly raised its head, and suddenly overtook Xiaohua's figure, directly stabbing towards Xiaohua's throat. Humph! Seeing the sword-type magic weapon stabbing towards him, Xiaohua knew that Daoist Jingru wanted to use it to slow down his flight. He only needed to close the distance between them, and he would have no means to fight back. Open! Xiaohua shouted, clenching his hand into a fist. Without the slightest hesitation, he used the Big Dipper Divine Fist on the back of the sword-type magic weapon. The Big Dipper Divine Fist was so wondrous that Xiaohua's figure flew like moving clouds in flowing water, and his fist hit the back of the sword. The condensed earth-type spiritual energy shell on his fist blocked Xiaohua's skin, but Daoist Jingru's heart shook, and his figure also slightly swayed. Obviously, his magic weapon had received the attack, and he also suffered some damage. Looking at Xiaohua again, he unexpectedly borrowed the force of the attack to once again increase the distance between them. Chapter 2175. Xiaohua was determined. No matter how Daoist Jingru attacked, he only dodged and didn't fight back. He only increased the distance between them. This. Daoist Jingru was somewhat at a loss for words. He didn't dare to use spells or activate magic treasures again. If he slowed down his flying speed again, maybe Xiaohua would really escape from the range of his divine sense. Therefore, Daoist Jingru spared no effort to fly again. It took him nearly half a day to close the distance again. Obviously, Daoist Jingru consumed more magic power to close the distance this time. It was just that this magic power was really too small. It was difficult for Daoist Jingru to detect it in his pursuit. Seeing Xiaohua enter his attack range again, Daoist Jingru slightly hesitated. Then, he clenched his teeth and raised his hand to slap his forehead. A multicolored light blossomed from the top of his head, and a foot-long infant flew out from the top of Daoist Jingru's head. This infant had white teeth and red lips. Its facial features were exactly the same as Daoist Jingru's. Its body was covered in a small spiritual armor. The spiritual armor was faintly overflowing with brilliance, and the infant was holding a cauldron-like magic treasure in its hand. At the bottom of the magic treasure, purple true samadhi fire licked the cauldron like tongues of fire. This was the nascent soul that Daoist Jingru gave birth to. As soon as the nascent soul came out, it immediately stretched and opened its small mouth. The surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth rumbled and was sucked into the nascent soul's body like a hurricane. Immediately, the nascent soul's eyes flashed with malevolence. It had the same expression as Daoist Jingru. Go, hearing Daoist Jingru's berate, his body slowed down. The nascent soul jumped with joy and waved the cauldron in its hand. Its figure turned into a stream of light and chased after Xiaohua's back. Although the nascent soul flew very fast, it would take half a meal for it to catch up with Xiaohua. Xiaohua's Buddhist sense had already sensed the abnormality of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. His complexion was deathly pale, but he had already prepared the tip of the demonic spear. The nascent soul flew to about 10 zhang behind Xiaohua and waved its small hand. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth around Xiaohua was sucked dry by the nascent soul. Moreover, a suffocating imprisoning force was born in this space. It wanted to choke Xiaohua's entire body. Rise! Magic power surged on Xiaohua's body, and an earth-yellow brilliance surged forth. The phoenix Dharma body flew out of his body. With a "ga" sound, a bright light flashed through his phoenix eyes. The phoenix Dharma body actually struggled to break free from the confinement force. A cold light flashed, and its phoenix claws grabbed at Daoist Jing Xi's nascent soul. True bloodline. The nascent soul's small mouth was also shocked, but he was not nervous. He pointed his finger, and the force was directed at the phoenix celestial body. It was like a rope, trying to bind the phoenix celestial body. Caw! The phoenix Dharma body flapped its wings with all its might and struggled to break free from the shackles. On the other hand, the nascent soul's body was also flashing with light. It was obvious that it was also consuming its magic power to cast the confinement spell. Xiaohua, on the other hand, was fiercely struggling with his arms. While he was using his physical body to break free from the shackles, he was also repeatedly using the heaven and earth within sleeves technique. Unexpectedly, he was evenly matched with the shackles of a nascent soul cultivator. Since he saw that the shackles were ineffective, Xiaohua immediately rushed forward and flew towards the nascent soul. The nascent soul was not afraid of Xiaohua's counterattack at all. Seeing Xiaohua stop, the corners of his mouth curled into a slight smile. He threw his hand, and the pill furnace immediately flew out. Samadhi True Fire, more than 100 feet long, shot out from within and pounced towards Xiaohua. Ha ha ha! Xiaohua laughed loudly. Under the cover of his Daoist robe, the heaven and earth within sleeves technique mixed with the Samadhi True Fire, also pounced towards the pill furnace. Ah! You also know Samadhi True Fire. The nascent soul's small voice was filled with astonishment. Go to hell. It was just a simple astonishment. The nascent soul's small hand clenched, and Xiaohua immediately felt the true essence in his body congeal. It seemed that he could not use his magic power. Good, good, a nascent soul cultivator's methods are indeed not simple. While Xiaohua was praising, he raised his left hand and took out the devil hammer. Pang, pang, pang. He struck at the space. The shackles of the nascent soul were once again shaken by the devil hammer. Xiaohua's strength had once again increased a bit under the cultivation of the celestial body bestowment technique. Devil weapon. In the distance, Daoist Jing Ru's speed had also slowed down a lot. He looked at the huge devil hammer in Xiaohua's hand with some disbelief. He was very clear that devil weapons were the nemesis of Daoist cultivators. His nascent soul was also afraid of devil weapons. If this devil hammer struck the nascent soul, there would definitely be irreparable damage. Fortunately, although this guy's magic power is not bad, it still can't compare to this old man's. Admittedly, the strength of his fleshly body is valiant, but he can only barely resist this old man's magic power. Daoist Jing Ru was actually somewhat glad. It was far from the previous aloof attitude of a nascent soul cultivator. Instead, Daoist Jing Ru only rejoiced for a moment when he saw a black light unexpectedly flash in Xiaohua's hand. A black iron needle flew out and pierced between the nascent soul's eyebrows. This black light was extremely fast, scaring the nascent soul into a slight daze. He hastily waved his hand and used a spell to block the black iron needle. However, this black iron needle was covered by Xiaohua's concealment. Taking advantage of the nascent soul's distraction, Xiaohua's figure suddenly sped up. His originally empty left hand suddenly flashed with the tip of a devil spear. It swiftly pierced towards the nascent soul's body. This devil spear tip had yet to reach the body when Daoist Jing Ru's nascent soul immediately gave birth to a chill. Almost without thinking, the nascent soul's figure suddenly swayed and unexpectedly disappeared into thin air. When it reappeared, it was already several zhang away, leaping high out of the range of Xiao Hua's devil spear tip. This was precisely the nascent soul's special teleportation technique. What kind of strange devil tool is this? Daoist Jing Ru was greatly shocked. His previous rejoicing had long since disappeared. It seems, this old man has a feeling that if this devil spear tip brushes against my nascent soul will be absorbed by this devil spear tip. Damn it, what kind of strange cultivator is this Xiao Hua? You're not cultivating your heaven-reaching Dao sect cultivation, what kind of strange thing are you doing? At this moment, Daoist Jing Ru almost wanted to teach Xiao Hua a lesson. Xiao Hua, this kind of cultivator who refined his body to a certain degree, was precisely the nemesis of nascent souls. Daoist Jing Ru was only at the early nascent soul stage and had yet to condense his nascent soul. If his nascent soul was slightly touched, it was possible that he would lose several decades or even several hundred years of cultivation before he could recover. If he wasn't careful, there would really be the danger of being destroyed. Daoist Jing Ru saw that Xiao Hua was a foundation establishment cultivator, so he released his nascent soul. He wanted to use his nascent soul to catch up to Xiao Hua, but when he released his nascent soul, he was also hesitant because he was afraid of the current situation. However, Daoist Jing Ru wasn't too afraid. After all, Xiao Hua's cultivation was too far apart, and his nascent soul still had too many divine abilities that it hadn't used. Therefore, Daoist Jing Ru's nascent soul leaped high into the sky and immediately pointed its hand. The pill furnace surrounded by Xiao Hua's true samadhi fire suddenly expanded, and an enormous suction force was born from that pill furnace. Not only did it cover Xiao Hua's Phoenix Dharma body, it even sucked Xiao Hua inside. You're tuning in to the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.